Chapter 12-14. 3 days later, the biggest underground criminal organization in the kingdom, the headquarters of the 8 departments of the organization, known as the Hachibana, were all defeated. There was no suspense at all. As the strongest fighters of the Hachibana, the biggest underground criminal organization, those 6 armed members who were comparable to fine steel-level adventurers had all lost their lives in the hands of Noah and Annabelle. A large number of strong fighters in the Hachibana's security department were also all wiped out by Annabelle's magic on that day. After losing these forces, no matter how deep the Hachibana infiltrated the kingdom, under the situation where even the intelligence of their headquarters had been exposed, it was naturally impossible for them to resist the attacks of the fine steel-level adventurers of the Wild Rose Gang. Therefore, almost on the second day after the intelligence was deciphered, Agagase, Ibirui, Gragland, Hina, T and even Gujiefu's group split into 6 groups, and with the strongest vanguard they quickly destroyed 6 of the Hachibana's departments. As for the remaining 2 departments, one was sent by Noah and Annabelle to destroy, while the other was the courtyard where Jieluo and the other members of the security department were at that day. Since Noah had already taken care of it, there was no need to destroy it. Therefore, in just 3 days the headquarters of the 8 departments of the Hachibana were all defeated. And just like Agagase planned from the start, after the 8 headquarters of the Hachibana were all defeated, the panicking managers of the departments could only helplessly seek help from the nobles who were in cahoots with them. In the end, Princess Lana, who had been keeping an eye on the nobles, successfully followed the vine and found the locations of the managers of the other 7 departments other than Jieluo. Then the people of the Wild Rose Gang acted and took down all of them. At this point the Hachibana, the biggest underground criminal organization in the kingdom, was almost completely wiped out. The reason why the word almost was used to describe it was because, other than the headquarters of the 8 departments, the Hachibana definitely had some small strongholds set up in the territories of the other nobles, just like the village where they cultivated the raw materials for the drugs. Those small strongholds had not been wiped out yet. Therefore, even if the managers and headquarters of the 8 departments of the Yakuza were all defeated, the leaders of the remaining small strongholds would still take advantage of their territories, and with the help of the nobles who were in cahoots with them, they could barely maintain their existence. Even so, the power of the Hachibana had been greatly weakened, and its influence on the kingdom had also been greatly reduced. If Princess Lana was smart enough, it shouldn't be difficult to find an opportunity to eliminate these fish that escaped the net. However, that had nothing to do with Noah. According to the agreement, Noah's assistance would only last until the managers and headquarters of the 8 departments of the Yakuza were all captured. If this assistance was maintained until the entire Hachi Fingers was defeated, who knew how long it would take to find all the fish that had escaped the net? Because of this, Haggis and the others weren't so thick-skinned as to ask Noah to stay in the capital for the sake of some fish that slipped through the net. In other words, the matter of dealing with the Hachibana had come to an end. As for the gains, they were not small at all. According to the previous agreement, after the headquarters of the 8 departments of the Hachibana were defeated, the stolen goods that were collected would all belong to Noah. After checking, Noah realized that these gains were more than 10 times more than what he got from selling large amounts of stainless steel. After all, most of the business that the headquarters of the 8 departments of the Hachibana had done so far was here, so how could it not be a lot? After a few days of hard work, he was able to get this kind of gains, so Noah was quite satisfied. Not to mention the gains in terms of money, just the gains from the rest of the materials that he planned to use to make equipment, tools, and other items were already considered a huge amount of resources. With these, he would definitely be able to make quite a number of magical tools with miraculous effects in the underground tomb of Nasarick, which would be of great help. Originally, Noah only planned to earn some money on this trip to see if he could use it to pay for the maintenance of the underground tomb of Nasarick. Now, with so many unexpected gains, if he was still not satisfied, then he would be too greedy. Under such circumstances, Noah felt that it was time for him to leave the capital and return to the underground tomb of Nasarick. You're leaving. In the hall of Gujiefu's mansion, with Gujiefu and Gujiefu as the leaders, a group of powerhouses of the highest level in the kingdom all revealed shocked expressions. What's so strange about it? Noah said helplessly. I came to the capital to do business, and not to settle down. Now that I've achieved my goal, there's nothing strange about leaving here, right? But if you're leaving, Mr. Noah is planning to return to Ylantir, right? Gudjefu frowned slightly. Compared to Ylantir, the capital should be more suitable for Mr. Noah to live in, right? Is this place more suitable for people to live in than Ylantir? Noah looked at Gudjefu. Perhaps, as the capital of the kingdom of Restige, this place is indeed more attractive than the cities at the border, but it's not necessarily suitable for people to live in, right? Hearing that, Gudjefu was speechless. It was impossible for Gudjefu not to understand the meaning behind Noah's words. Indeed, compared to the cities at the border, the capital might be more prosperous. But there were too many disputes here. Other things aside, all kinds of nobles were basically gathered in the capital. With the current internal strife in the kingdom, it was impossible for someone like Noah, who had extraordinary powers, not to get involved in these disputes. When the time came, if he were to be involved in the political whirlpool of the kingdom, then the trouble would be huge. Of course, this so-called trouble would depend on Noah's wishes. If Noah wanted to occupy a place in the kingdom, then with Noah's abilities, it would definitely not be difficult for him to make a name for himself here. Unfortunately, Noah did not have that intention at all. Therefore, the disputes in the kingdom were only trouble to Noah. But, isn't this too much of a pity? Gudjefu was sincerely anxious. With Sir Dole's strength, if you are willing to serve the king, then the kingdom's situation will definitely improve a lot. The king has always wanted to meet you, sir. Don't you want to consider it? That's right, Sir Noah. Clem was also present, and he was just as anxious as Gudjefu. Ever since Lady Lana heard about Sir Noah, she has always wanted to meet Sir Noah. Don't you want to consider it, Sir Noah? Gudjefu and Clem's anxiety was not without reason. After interacting with each other for the past few days, everyone present had realized that Noah was unfathomable. At the very least, everyone present knew that Noah had power that surpassed everyone else, but no one knew where the limits of this power were. Even a level 50 super expert like Ibirui could not see the tip of the iceberg of Noah's true strength. Everyone found it hard to imagine just how strong Noah was. If this power could be used by the kingdom, then it would be an unprecedented help. Perhaps the kingdom's internal and external troubles and the gradual corruption could be improved because of Noah's existence? Come to think of it, who wouldn't be anxious about Noah's departure as long as they truly cared about the kingdom? Not to mention Gudjefu and Clem, even Hagrid tried to persuade him. Sir Noah, please reconsider. Alright, you guys don't need to say anymore. Noah shook his head. I have my own home and I need to return there. There are many people there that I need to take care of. I also need to take care of those troublesome fellows. I can't stay here. Noah's home made everyone speechless. At the same time, it also made Annabelle's expressionless face soften slightly. Because the home that Noah mentioned was undoubtedly the tomb under Nasarick, wasn't it? This time Hagrid and the others had no choice but to give up. Just like that, Noah's plan to leave the royal city was put on the agenda. Night quietly fell. In the courtyard, Noah raised his head and looked at the bright full moon in the sky. His expression was more or less peaceful. No matter which world it is, the moon will be full sometimes. This sentence was heard by someone who happened to pass by. You say that as if you have been to other worlds. Noah's eyes flashed slightly. Chapter 12:15. The voice behind him made Noah, who was looking at the bright moon in the sky, slowly turn around and look at the source of the voice. Over there, Ibirua was dressed in a black robe as usual. She wore a mask that completely covered her entire body like the Grim Reaper of the night. She hugged her arms and leaned against the wall. Her gaze seemed to be cast on Noah. She just stared at Noah and said as she spoke, "However, even if you really came from another world, I wouldn't be surprised at all." Hearing this, Noah nodded, turned around again, looked at the moon in the sky and said, "Maybe I'm really not from this world, that's hard to say." Obviously, Noah thought Ibiruai's words were an exaggeration. After all, for Ibiruai, Noah's power was indeed beyond the reach of a human. Then, under such circumstances, it wasn't strange for Ibiruai to say such a thing. In view of this, Noah followed Ibiruai's words and half-jokingly told the truth. Noah didn't know this. What Ibiruai said next was very important to Noah. Looking at Noah's back facing her, looking at the bright moon in the sky, his robe fluttering in the night wind, creating an exceptionally beautiful scene, Ibiruai hesitated. After a while, Ibiruai seemed to have made up her mind and finally asked such a question. Hey, you're not a god, are you? God. Noah turned his head and looked at Ibiruai with some confusion. What is that? You don't know? Could it be that you are not a god? Ibirui asked thoughtfully. No, maybe even you don't know that you're a god, that's hard to say. Seeing that Ibirui had fallen into a state of soliloquy, Noah felt a little puzzled. Can you not say things that others don't understand? Just as Noah was about to say those words, an unexpected impact hit Noah with Ibirua's next sentence. Raising her youthful face that could be imagined even if she couldn't see it, Elbaru looked straight at Noah. After a moment of consideration, she said so. Are you a player? Hearing this, Noah's eyes suddenly narrowed. He suddenly raised his head and looked at Ibirua. Just now, what did this vampire girl say? Players? It was indeed the players, wasn't it? Looking at Noah's sudden strong reaction, Ibiru's hands tightened little by little. Her voice was filled with an unimaginable uneasiness and solemnity. I knew it. You really are a player. I knew it. It's impossible for an ordinary human to possess such powerful strength, unless you are a player from another world or a descendant who has inherited the bloodline of these players. A player from another world. Hearing Ibirua's words, Noah's eyes couldn't help but flicker. If it wasn't for the unstable emotions that caused his mana to go berserk when he was young, Noah would have cultivated a calmer state of mind in critical moments. But now he couldn't help but be shaken, right? At this time, Noah only had one question in his mind. That is, does the so-called player that Ibirua mentioned match the first thought that came to his mind when he first heard this word? So Noah took a deep breath, calmed down and looked straight at Ibirua. What do you mean by player? Noah's words made Ibirua frown. At this point, are you still going to hide it? There's something wrong with what you just said, Noah said calmly. First of all, I really don't know what you mean by player. Liar. Ibirua directly refuted. Your performance just now clearly shows that you know about the existence of players. Indeed, I know of a type of existence known as the players. Noah looked at Ibirua. But I don't know if the players I know are the same as the players you know. Ibirua was a little surprised. Don't tell me you don't know about the existence of other players? Other players. Noah narrowed his eyes and shook his head. Impossible. If it's the type of player I know, then there shouldn't be any other similar existence in this world. Why did the tomb in Nasaric transmigrate from the game Yggdrasil to this world? Because of the connection between the two worlds, the data in YGGDRASILL, which should have been in the other world, flowed into this world, and in the process completed the materialization. According to what Gaia and Alea said, before the tomb in Nasaric transmigrated to this world, there was indeed a player from Yggdrasil that came with it. However, that player should have been intercepted by Gaia and Alea. Then there shouldn't be a player from Yggdrasil in this world. Although that was what he said, the more Noah thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. Come to think of it, they were clearly two completely different worlds. Why did this world have so many similarities with Yggdrasil? In YGGDRSL there were so-called professions. In this world there were also so-called professions. In YGGDRSL there was magic. In this world there were many spells similar to Yggdrasil. Even the magical items from Yggdrasil had appeared in this world. For example, the magic sealing crystal that Noah obtained from the sunlight scripture Purgatory was a magic item from YGGDRSL. Why did these two completely different worlds have so many similarities? This was not a parallel world like Aslan or Edris, nor was it a world of different species like the world of humans and the world of elemental fairies. This was a world that was completely separated, two worlds that existed independently in the between the worlds. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be so many similarities between these two worlds, right? Could it be that in this world, there really were other players from YGGDRASILL? Undoubtedly, Gaia and Alea said that there was only one player that could come to this world, and that player was also intercepted. What was going on? Looks like you really don't know about the existence of other players. Seeing Noah's distressed appearance, Ibirua said thoughtfully, No wonder you didn't react when you heard about the legend of the Eight Desires King. Ibirua's words woke Noah up. Eight Desires King. It had once possessed a great amount of divine power, and had briefly dominated this world. No one knew where it had come from. Could it be? Noah looked at Ibirua in shock. The 8 Desires King is a player? Ibirua didn't answer Noah's question. Instead, she pondered for a while and suddenly said, "Actually, he's not the only one like the 8 Desires King, who suddenly appeared in this world out of nowhere and possessed great divine power. Once, the existence known as the 13 Heroes, the demon god that they defeated also suddenly appeared in this world," Ibirua said in a low voice. "The 6 gods that the Scythian theocracy believes in also suddenly appeared in this world." Noah's expression instantly became uncertain. Thinking about it this way, it was true that many famous existences in myths and legends had appeared in such an extremely abrupt manner. The 8 Desires King that once dominated this world, the demon god that the 13 heroes defeated, the 6 gods that the Scythian theocracy believed in. These were all existences that suddenly appeared in this world. These existences that suddenly appeared in this world with great divine power are the players that I know. Ibirua looked at Noah. And the descendants of these players will be addressed differently because of their race. However, the people of the theocracy call the players who inherited the bloodline of the 6 gods gods. Noah's heart was more or less in a mess. Chapter 12:16. From the information obtained from the Sunshine Scripture, Noah learned about the existence of the 6 great gods. It was said that they suddenly appeared in this world hundreds of years ago, and were worshipped by the people of the Scythian theocracy. From various rumors, Noah also learned about the existence of the 8 Desires King, and the demon god. Legend had it that the 8 Desires King was a great existence of unknown origin. He suddenly appeared in this world and used his unparalleled power to temporarily dominate the entire world. As for the demon god, he was also a kind of evil person who suddenly appeared in this world and brought great disaster to this world. He was defeated by the existence of the 13 heroes. Whether it was the 6 great gods, the 8 Desires King, or the demon god, they were all characters that only existed in human myths and legends. However, these characters that appeared in myths and legends all had one thing in common that could not be ignored. That is, they all appeared in this world very suddenly. Moreover, before they appeared, there were no signs of them. Originally, Noah only treated these as myths and legends. However, if it was really like what Ibirua said, whether it was the 6 great gods, the 8 Desires King, or the demon god, they were all players, then this matter made sense. The reason why they suddenly appeared was because they did not belong to this world. The reason why they had such great divine power was because their level was higher than the highest level in this world, which was only level 35 in the hero domain. The reason why there were many professions in magic that were similar to those in Yggdrasil was because these players brought the professions and magic from Yggdrasil to this world, and taught them to the people of this world. The reason why the Sunshine Scripture had the items from Yggdrasil was because the 6 great gods who left these items behind were players from Yggdrasil. All these signs pointed to the fact that players from Yggdrasil had appeared more than once in this world where players from Yggdrasil should not exist. Phew! Noah exhaled deeply, calming down his somewhat chaotic emotions. He immediately raised his eyes, looked at Ibirua, and solemnly said, "Thank you for telling me such important information. This is not worthy of your special thanks." Ibirua was startled at first. She did not expect Noah to suddenly thank her so solemnly. She tilted her head in confusion and asked, "Then you are a player, right? You can say so." Noah smiled bitterly. "At least I am not from this world." As expected. Ibirua looked at Noah in a completely different way. "Looking at you, you seem to have just arrived in this world not long ago. You are not very familiar with this world, right? Once you are familiar with this world, what do you plan to do with it?" But Ibirua did not say this last sentence. However, this was what Ibirua was the most. There was no other way. The descent of the 6 great gods into this world led to the emergence of the Scythian cult nation. A nation that rejected all races other than humans and advocated the supremacy of humans. The 8 Desires King had King of 8 Desires King came to this world, the demon god of kings of gods, and brought unimaginable disasters gods. Every time a player came, they would have a great impact on this world. Then, as a player, what does Noah plan to do with this world after coming to this world? Is he going to become a religion like the 6 great gods and build a human country? Is he going to sweep away thousands of armies and rule the world like the 8 Desires King? Or is he going to bring unimaginable disasters to the world like the demon god of gods? Ibirua realized that this seemingly ordinary human in front of her could change this world greatly with just a thought. Is this change good or bad? If she did not confirm it, who would be at ease? As if seeing through the uneasiness and solemnity in Ibirua's heart, Noah sighed and turned around. You don't have to worry. As long as the people of this world do not provoke me, then I will not do anything to the people of this world. This answer made Ibirua's uneasiness even more intense. So Ibirua could not help but say, then what if someone provokes you? Noah glanced at Ibirua and said indifferently, if there's a grudge, then there's a grudge. If there's a grudge, then there's a grudge, right? This sentence sent a chill down Ibirua's spine. The meaning of Noah's words could not be clearer. As long as they don't provoke him, then he will not come looking for trouble. However, as long as they provoked him, he would not show them any mercy. Ibirua felt that she really needed to tell Haggis and Gudjefu not to provoke Noah for the sake of the kingdom's interests. Otherwise, this corrupt country with internal and external troubles will really be finished. So Ibirua took a deep breath and asked tentatively, apart from you this time, are there any other players who came to this world with you? No. Noah said bluntly. Apart from me, there are only a few of my subordinates who came with me. They are not players but something similar to summon monsters. As long as I don't allow it, they will not casually participate in the disputes of this world. Is that so? Eleanor sighed in relief and nodded. I understand. I hope one day you will not become an enemy of humanity. Enemy of humanity? Noah looked at Ibirua with a half-smile. As an undying, you're quite fond of humans. Is that so? Ibirua said, not to be outdone. As a human, don't you get along well with the other races? Noah shrugged and didn't say anything else. Seeing this, Ibirua also tactfully shut her mouth. She took a deep look at Noah's back before quietly retreating. Only Noah was left. He continued to look at the bright moon in the sky, but his mood was no longer as relaxed as before. Instead, it was full of thoughts. Looks like it is necessary to talk to Gaia and Alea about this matter. Why were there so many Yggdrasil players in this world that had once descended into this world? Noah really couldn't answer this question alone. Only Gaia and Alea could give an affirmative answer based on this matter. Just when Noah was lost in thought, an aura suddenly approached Noah at an extremely fast speed. Noah, who was awakened from his thoughts, turned his head in surprise and looked at the entrance of the courtyard. There, like a ninja, Annabelle suddenly descended from the sky and knelt on one knee on the ground, looking at Noah. At this moment, Annabelle's beautiful face was filled with unprecedented worry. Then, Annabelle spoke hesitantly with such worry in her voice. Sir Noah, Sir Yerbait has just sent a message. Yerbait? Noah clearly noticed the worry on Annabelle's pretty face, and an ominous premonition rose in his heart. What did Yerbait say? Annabelle parted her red lips and opened her mouth slightly, but it seemed that there was something that she couldn't say out loud. She also seemed to be worried that Noah would be angry if she said it out loud. She couldn't say anything for a while. That performance made the ominous premonition in Noah's heart even stronger. What's wrong? Noah looked at Annabelle closely. Is it something you can't tell me? Annabelle bit her lips, and after a long while, she finally spoke with some difficulty. Sir Zatia rebelled. Noah's face suddenly sank. Nasaric Underground Tomb, Basement 10. Noah, who used the ability of Anzur Ring of Respect to teleport back to the Nasaric Underground Tomb, opened the door of the room in front of the throne room that couldn't be directly teleported to, and walked out. Outside the door, led by Yerbade, Jan, Mare, Kossitz, Demugos, and other guardians were all present. Even Sebastian and the rest of the combat mates were here. Sir Noah. A group of NPCs in the Nasaric Underground Tomb all knelt on one knee and bowed their noblest heads to Noah. Chapter 12:17. There was an unbearable stifling atmosphere in the air. Looking at the NPCs kneeling on one knee in front of him with their heads lowered, not even daring to breathe loudly, Noah could clearly feel the deep uneasiness hidden in their hearts. That uneasiness was mainly directed at Noah. Moreover, rather than uneasiness, it was more like fear. Of course, what the NPCs of the underground tomb were afraid of was not Noah, but whether or not Noah would be disappointed in them. After spending some time together, Noah had a deep understanding of the loyalty of these NPCs. To these NPCs, Noah, the supreme ruler of the great underground tomb of Nasaric, was everything. The strong loyalty that no one could compare to made these NPCs care about Noah to the extreme. If Noah doubted or was disappointed in the NPCs of the underground tomb because of Satya's rebellion, it would definitely be worse than death for these NPCs. It was precisely because he knew this that Noah felt that it was really inconceivable. As a guardian of the highest level of loyalty to Noah, how could Satya rebel? With such feelings, Noah looked at the NPCs of the underground tomb, who did not even dare to breathe loudly, and sighed. "All right, you don't have to be so worried. Satya is Satya and you are you. I won't blame all of you for one person's mistakes." After saying that, Noah turned around and walked in the direction of the throne room. "You all come together." "Yes, Your Majesty." Everyone obediently agreed, stood up, and followed Noah in the direction of the throne room. Because Noah used the ability of Ans-Ul's Ring of Respect to teleport directly to the room in front of the throne room, the distance between the throne room and the throne room was not very far. When Noah arrived in front of the throne room, the two combat mates went past Noah and opened the door for Noah to pass through. Noah led a group of NPCs from Nazaric's underground tomb into the throne room. A group of NPCs from Nazaric's underground catacombs stopped in front of the throne room. Noah, on the other hand, walked up the steps alone, came to the throne and sat down directly. Noah didn't even look at the NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nasaric as he issued an order. "Main control source activate." As soon as he finished speaking, a translucent window that looked a bit like a control panel suddenly flashed in front of Noah. This scene was like a character opening a personal interface in a game. It gave people a feeling that this was not reality. Noah cast his gaze at the window that suddenly flashed in front of him. It was a window that was divided into several pages by labels. Each page was densely filled with text. This window was the management system of the underground tomb of Nasaric. It recorded the daily management fees of the underground tomb of Nasaric, as well as the types and numbers of monsters that existed on each floor of the tomb, as well as the various magical traps that were being activated. In Yggdrasil, this window could be opened at any time and place. However, after coming to this world, this main window that represented the operation and management of the underground tomb of Nasaric could only be opened and operated in the throne room, which was equivalent to the heart of the tomb. Usually, when Noah confirmed the operation of the underground tomb of Nasaric, he would first make a general confirmation here, then listen to the detailed reports of the situation on each floor of Yerbaide's integration. Therefore, Noah was quite familiar with how to operate this main window. With practiced movements, Noah's finger swiped back and forth on the main window a few times and opened the NPC display page. It recorded the names of all the NPCs in the underground tomb of Nasaric. Because the order was determined by level, Noah easily saw the name of the level 100 NPC, Satya. Her name was now in a dazzling reddish-black color. Apart from Satya, the names of the other NPCs were displayed in white text. Looking at Satya's dazzling reddish-black name, Noah frowned and looked at Yearbaide. "This is the reason why you confirmed that Satya betrayed us?" When Noah was not in the underground tomb of Nasaric, Yearbaide was in charge of adjusting and confirming the main window here, as well as the operation and management of the underground tomb of Nasaric. Presumably, Yearbaide had discovered that Satya's name was abnormal, so he came to this conclusion, right? Not only that, Yearbaide's pretty face tensed up as if to strengthen his persuasion. After discovering Satya's abnormality, we also tried to contact her, but no matter who it was, we couldn't successfully contact her. In addition, Dimugo said in a deep voice, "The servants that Satya took with her when she left the underground tomb of Nasaric have all been confirmed dead. Every floor of the great underground tomb in Nasaric had its own magical creature. Some of these monsters were ordinary monsters with automatic rebirth, while others were high-level monsters with non-automatic rebirth that required money to be summoned. Among the high-level monsters with non-automatic rebirth, almost every guardian would choose a servant that directly obeyed their orders. Satya naturally had one as well. The servants are dead, and Satya's whereabouts are unknown, right?" Noah's fingers tapped rhythmically on the armrest of the throne. After a while, he pointed at Satya's name on the main window and asked, "What does this red and black name mean?" In the underground tomb of Nasaric, if an NPC died, their name would disappear from the main window. However, Satya's name did not disappear. It only changed color. Could it be that this was the color of betrayal? Yerbade and the others looked at each other, then stepped forward and answered. Lord Noah, the meaning behind this change in text might be that Satya has been mentally controlled, turning her into an existence that will be hostile to the tomb in Nasariq, Noah said with a frown. Mentally controlled? Noah was startled. That can't be. Satya was a vampire, classified as an undead existence. For an undead, no matter whether it was positive or negative, any mental effects would be nullified. Why would someone like Satya be mentally controlled? I don't know the reason yet, but it is a fact that Satya has become an enemy. Yerbade said with an unprecedentedly serious expression and a firm tone. No matter the reason, Satya, who betrayed Lord Noah, cannot be forgiven. Lord Noah, please allow me to recommend myself and form a subjugation team. Cossitz and I, who are invincible in terms of attack and defense, will suppress Satya. No, Demiurgos said with a trembling voice. Considering that among the Guardians, Satya is the strongest one in a duel. If we want to have absolute confidence in defeating her, it's best to let Yauda, who is good at team battles, and Marley, who is the strongest wizard, fight together. That will be better. The other Guardians nodded one after another, their expressions resolute. For these Guardians, betraying the supreme ruler of the underground tomb of Nasariq was unforgivable, no matter the reason. Even if it was against their will. Even if it was their companions. However, Noah's determination caused him to sweep his gaze across everyone present. And then? What will happen after we subjugate Satya? Hearing this, the group of Guardians was about to say something, but they were interrupted by Noah. Calm down and think about it. Satya is an undead. Logically speaking, it's impossible for her to be mentally controlled. But in the end, Satya's mind was still controlled. This way, if you go all out and attack Satya without understanding anything, can you guarantee that you won't be mentally controlled and become a traitor? The Guardians held their breaths. Chapter 12:18. When it came to loyalty to the highest ruler of the Nasariq underground tomb, as long as one was a member of the Nasariq underground tomb, there was no one who couldn't hold their heads high and confidently tell everyone that they would never betray him. It was also because of this strong loyalty that everyone present was so angry at Satya's betrayal. Everyone, including Yerbade and Demiurgos, felt that Satya's betrayal was trampling on this loyalty, right? For the NPCs of the Nasariq underground tomb who had the same loyalty, wasn't this unforgivable? In addition, even if she had no choice, Satya had indeed betrayed the supreme ruler of the Nasariq underground tomb. No matter what the reason was, it would not be able to convince the NPCs of the Nasariq underground tomb to understand. However, if the same thing were to happen to him, what would happen? Yerbade and the others shuddered just thinking about it. If they were under mind control, even if they were unwilling, what could they do? In the end, they would still betray Noah, wouldn't they? The NPCs of the Nasariq underground tomb were not afraid of death. Compared to being mentally controlled and betraying Noah, these NPCs would rather die. The scary thing was that they couldn't even choose to die. That would be a fate worse than death. Do you understand now? Noah sighed. Even Satya, who shouldn't be mentally controlled, was mentally controlled. How can you guarantee that you won't encounter the same thing? Calm down. Only then did the NPCs in Nasariq's underground tomb calm down. Sorry, Lord Noah, Yerbade said with some shame. We were reckless. That's not important. Noah shook his head. What's important is that we have to figure out why Satya was mentally controlled. Otherwise, your situation will become very dangerous. The NPCs of the Nasariq underground tomb nodded heavily. In Yggdrasil, mental control also existed. A mind-dominated character is, as the name suggests, a subject of servitude to the person using the mind domination until the mind domination is removed or the character dies. As an undying, be it positive or negative mental influence, it should not have any effect on Satya. However, there were exceptions to everything. Take Noah for example. His curse resistance could also repel all mysteries, whether beneficial or not, unless the mysteries could affect even the gods. However, through Noah's own use of mysteries such as magic, even if it did not affect God, it could still affect him. Noah wasn't the only one. Luo Hao, who was also a godslayer, was able to use Eastern divination. Yarek, known as the Black Prince, could also use magic. Many of the Godslayers could even borrow the power of magic props that were activated by their own curse power to obtain mysterious help. Moreover, even if the external mysteries would be repelled by the Godslayer's curse resistance, if the mysteries were directly poured into the Godslayer's body, it would still be effective. For example, Alice, Erica, and Liliana had once used the professor's magic on Noah in a mouth-to-mouth manner. That was the best example. Thinking about it this way, the Undying would not be mentally controlled. That might be a relative term. Then, the first thing to consider was under what circumstances could mind domination be effective on the Undying Satya, who was at level 100. If they didn't figure this out, the NPCs in Nazarik's underground tomb would all be mentally controlled and betray them. If that happened, they wouldn't even have a place to cry. Yair Bade, Noah said to Yair Bade. Nothing abnormal happened to Shatia before she left Nazarik's tomb, right? No. Yair Bade shook his head. At that time, Satya was behaving normally. She didn't show any abnormalities. Then, Satya left the Nasarik underground tomb to carry out the mission I gave her to capture the people of the Silian theocracy, right? Noah asked again. What happened to that mission? It was not completed, Yair Bade answered honestly. Satya suffered from mind control while carrying out her mission. Oh. Noah narrowed his eyes. In other words, the person who used mind domination on Satya is very likely a puppet of the Silian theocracy. Is that so? Yair Bade frowned and hesitated for a moment before saying. Although it is a little rude to say this, Lord Noah, the strength of the humans in this world seems to be pitifully weak. It is hard to imagine that such a human could successfully use mind domination on an Undying Satya, who is at level 100. Is that so? Noah suddenly laughed coldly. What if the god that the people of the Silian theocracy believe in is also a player? What? Yair Bade was stunned. Not to mention Yair Bade, even the rest of the NPCs were stunned on the spot. In such a situation, Noah closed his eyes. After a while, he suddenly opened his eyes and asked. He then asked, in Yggdrasil, if one wants to successfully use mind domination on an Undying, what kind of item can do it? This. Yair Bade's beautiful face changed a few times and he whispered. If one wants to successfully use mind domination on an Undying that shouldn't be affected by mind domination, the level of the item has to be at least legendary. But Satya is not an ordinary Undying, Demugos said. Satya is the true ancestor of the vampires, and the composition of her profession is quite strict. It specializes in strengthening her in combat. Among those professions, there are many special skills that can resist mind magic. In addition, Satya also carries an item to reduce the effects of abnormal statuses. In theory, it is impossible for her to be mind-dominated. At this point, Demugos seemed to have thought of something and muttered, Unless. Noah looked at Demugos. Unless it is a world-class item, right? Everyone suddenly fell silent. A world-class item. There were only 200 of them in the entire Yggdrasil. It could break the game's balance and could be said to be the ultimate item that broke the game's rules. The power of an item of this level could even be compared to an X-grade relic. If it was such an ultimate item in Yggdrasil that could even break the balance of the game, it was not impossible for Satya to be mentally controlled. But that's impossible, Demugos said in disbelief. In this world other than the Supreme Being, is there anyone else who can have a world-class item? What's impossible about that? Noah was speechless. If the 6 great gods of the Silian cult nation were really players, then maybe they really could have left a world-class item for the people of that country. After all, the 6 great gods were also players of Yggdrasil, right? Although not everyone could have a world-class item, and there were only 200 of them in the entire Yggdrasil, it was not surprising that a player who was known as the 6 great gods would bring one into this world. Noah just did not expect that the people sent by the Silian cult nation to the vicinity of Khan village would be able to bring the most precious world-class item for a group of missing believers. If he could have gotten the information that the 6 great gods of the Silian cult nation were players in advance, Noah would not have rashly sent the NPCs in the underground tomb of Nasarik to capture them. Thinking of this, Noah took a deep breath and looked at Yair Bade. What about Satya's current location? It has been confirmed, Yair Bade replied immediately. She's near Khan village and hasn't left. Noah nodded, stood up and walked down from the throne. Then I'll go and see Satya. After that, Noah did not give the NPCs any time to react and walked out of the door. The group of NPCs was shocked as they hurriedly followed after him. Chapter 12:19. Not far from Khan village, there was an extremely vast open space. This was the place where Noah and Yair had captured all of the scripture of sunlight from the Lian theocracy. At this moment, this extremely vast open space appeared to be in a rather sorry state. To be specific, in the center of the vast open space, there was a small area that seemed to have been burnt and had turned pitch black. And in this small charred area stood a figure. It was a rather petite figure of a young girl with a beautiful face. She was wearing a red and black princess-like dress, and her silver-gray hair was tied into a ponytail that shone with a gorgeous luster under the sunlight. The beautiful petite girl was like a noble little princess, and the scene of her standing under the sunlight was extremely beautiful. Unfortunately, that small area that was completely charred black had completely destroyed the entire beautiful atmosphere. Moreover, if one looked closely, they would discover that the girl who looked like a noble little princess was like a puppet that was hung by an invisible string. Her hands were hanging down, and her body was hanging down without any strength. Her pair of scarlet eyes had no focus at all, and she looked quite strange. At a certain moment in front of this open space, a burst of darkness suddenly surged out and gathered in the space, forming a semi-oval shape. It was the shape of a door. A few figures walked out of the door that was made up of pitch-black darkness and appeared on the empty ground out of thin air. They were the NPCs from the great underground tomb of Nassarik led by Noah. As soon as they appeared, Yair immediately spoke. Be on guard. The NPCs from the great underground tomb of Nassarik, who walked out of the teleportation magic called portal, seemed to have been ready for a long time. Almost at the instant when Yair voice sounded, they began to move without hesitation. Whoosh! With Annabelle as the leader, a total of 6 combat maids from the Pleiades star cluster spread out like phantoms. They scuttled to the surroundings with weapons in their hands, facing outside, and faces full of vigilance. Noah, Marley, Cositas, Demugos, Sebastian, and the other level 100 NPCs formed an encirclement with their backs facing Noah, protecting him inside. Finally, a black light flashed on Yair body, and a pitch-black demon-shaped armor covered her entire delicate body. A giant axe also appeared in her hand, protecting Noah. The 3 lines of defense protected Noah layer by layer, and it could be said that they were on guard to the extreme. Obviously, the NPCs from the great underground tomb of Nassarik were worried that there was a powerful enemy who could control Satya and harm Noah. Only Noah, who was heavily protected, raised his eyes. Satya, the guardian with the strongest solo ability in the great underground tomb of Nassarik, was hanging there like a marionette. This made Noah's mood extremely bad. It was as if Satya had lost her life and turned into a pure corpse. She did not react to any changes in her surroundings, and her scarlet eyes were empty and lifeless. She did not have any consciousness at all. Her behavior was telling everyone present that Satya had been controlled by Satya. Satya had indeed been controlled by her mind. However, Noah did not understand. Since those guys from the Siren Theocracy had used a world-class item to control Satya's mind, then why was Satya like this? After all, Satya was a level 100 super expert. Moreover, her professions were all focused on combat. In terms of combat power, she was stronger than many level 100 characters. In this world, an existence at Satya's level was like a natural disaster that could act on its own. Even if the 6 great gods of the Siren Theocracy were players, they would at most be level 100. Even if they were stronger than Satya, they would not be much stronger. Considering Satya's combat strength, since they had her under control, it was unlikely that they would leave such a super fighter behind. In the game, characters who have been controlled by their minds will act according to the orders of the existence that controls them. Noah frowned. But Satya was directly thrown here, as if she didn't receive any orders. Something must have happened before the other party gave the order, right? Yair raised his conjecture to Noah while guarding his surroundings. Looking at the surrounding situation, Satya seems to have had a conflict with the enemy before she was controlled and fought. Considering that the other party has a world-class item, the strength of the humans in this world shouldn't surpass Satya's. It's very likely that before Satya's mind was completely controlled, Satya's last desperate counterattack might have defeated the ruler. That's possible. If Satya's final counterattack had killed her opponent before the overlord gave the order, it would make sense that Satya had stayed here alone without receiving any orders. Noah turned his gaze to the ground around where Satya was standing. The area was charred black, proving that Satya had fought with the enemy before she became like this. However, there were no corpses around. It was obvious that Satya had more than one enemy. Even after killing the ruler, the other party's companions still retrieved the corpse and evacuated. They probably had no choice but to leave Satya here, right? In Satya's situation, if he ignored her, she would continue to stay like this. However, if he got too close or if he attacked Satya, it was very likely that Satya would attack him, unless he removed Satya's mental control state. At that moment, Noah took out a small silver sword from his waist. Closing his eyes, Noah held the silver dagger tightly and spoke softly. Aster, can you remove the mental control from Satya's body? As the highest level elven device and one of the strongest, even the 5 elven monarchs had to be wary of its power. Aster had a curse resistance ability that was even more illegal than the Godslayer. Therefore, if it was the Demon Slayer, there might be a way to remove the control of the world-class item on Satya. Aster's voice sounded in Noah's mind. No problem. I'm Master's sword. As long as I have sufficient divine power, unless it's at the level of the gods that Master has killed, I have the ability to remove all mysteries. Aster's voice eased Noah's expression, but the next moment, Aster's tone changed. But if I want to remove the mental control of that vampire, I have to stab my elven device into her body. This time Noah's brows furrowed. But if I get close to her, she'll attack, right? Yes. Aster's voice sounded in Noah's mind. So Master, please be prepared to fight that vampire. Noah fell silent. Fight against Zaisha? Lord Noah. Yerbade seemed to have seen through Noah's thoughts and suddenly said, if you want to suppress Satya, please allow us to accept this mission. That's right. Demugos also said. Although we know that the Supreme Sovereign is worried that we will be under mental control like Satya, if we fight Satya, the Supreme Sovereign might also be under mental control. That's something that can't happen. Lord Noah. Yal, Mayor, Kossitz, Sebastian, and the others all said in unison. Please give this mission to us. Noah did not speak. He opened his eyes and looked at the marionette-like Satya in front of him. After a while he turned around. Send people to keep an eye on the surroundings. Don't let anyone come close. If you find anyone from the Celian cult nation, take them down immediately. After confirming that no one is secretly watching, we'll deal with Satya's matter. Hearing this, the NPCs could only nod. Chapter 12:20. Nasaric Underground Tomb. Underground 9th floor. In the bedroom, Noah laid on the bed as soon as he came back. He stared at the ceiling as his dark eyes fluctuated with intense emotions. Frankly speaking, Noah was rarely like this. Therefore, if someone who understood Noah saw this scene, they would definitely be shocked, right? In fact, Noah's current mood was indeed quite anxious. That's right. He was anxious. Because of Shesha's matter. Wong! A dazzling white light rose from Noah's body and set off a burst of light particles. They moved back and forth in the air and converged into a human figure. Within the light, Aster's petite figure slowly appeared. Her beautiful silver-white hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall. Her fair skin looked like pure white ivory under the dazzling white light. Aster slowly opened his eyes amidst the radiance. His mysterious gaze fell on Noah. Looking at those beautiful eyes, Noah even had a feeling that he would be sucked in at any moment. Under such circumstances, the light gradually dissipated. Aster rode on Noah's body and placed her hands on Noah's chest. Her delicate body leaned forward and looked down at Noah, who was lying in front of her. Her tender face didn't have any emotions. From Noah's perspective, Aster was so beautiful that it was tragic. No matter who it was, even if they were women like Aster, they would be moved when they saw such a beautiful Aster. However, Noah wasn't in the mood for that. Aster. Noah looked up at Aster and bitterly smiled. You're not wearing clothes again. Yes. Aster, who appeared from the light, didn't wear any clothes as usual. Her tender but extremely beautiful body was exposed in front of Noah's eyes. Of course, that pair of ivory smooth thighs was still wearing something called knee socks. The sword fairy, who was wearing knee-high socks, maintained her posture of riding on Noah's body. She looked down at Noah from above and her mysterious eyes swayed slightly as she spoke. I think that this attire should be able to make Master happy. Happy? Noah felt a little powerless. It's not the first time I've seen it. Is that so? Aster's tender face moved closer to Noah, to the point where it wouldn't be strange if they kissed. Her flickering eyes were a little moist. In other words, Master is tired of looking at my body? Can you not use such misleading words? Noah felt that his body was becoming weaker, so he simply said so. Aster, who asked you to appear in this attire so often? Why don't you take off your knee socks? Take off my knee socks. Aster's expressionless face turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye. Master is really a pervert. It was still the same unfathomable sense of shame as before. However, because of this weakness, Noah was able to use the same trick to deal with Aster when she appeared in this attire in the past. Therefore, Noah continued to use the same trick that had worked so well in the past. If you don't want to take off your knee socks, then you have to obediently put on your clothes. As long as Noah said this, then this elf girl who had an unusual sense of shame about exposing her thighs would obediently put on her clothes, allowing Noah to avoid a lot of stimulation. Unfortunately, this time Noah was destined to be surprised. Aster's adorable face turned redder and redder, but she didn't put on her clothes due to shyness as Noah expected. Instead, she revealed a determined expression. I understand. Saying this, Aster's trembling hands removed her knee socks under Noah's astonished gaze. In the next moment, a pair of white and smooth thighs were exposed in front of Noah. Until this moment, Aster was completely naked. Aster? Noah was really surprised. The sword elf named Aster's sense of shame was different from ordinary girls. Ordinary girls wouldn't be able to calmly show their naked body in front of the opposite sex. But Aster could do it without batting an eyelid. Ordinary girls would think that showing their thighs would increase their charm. But Aster was abnormally shy about this matter. For Aster, the act of showing her thighs was no different from a young girl showing her naked body in front of the opposite sex. In the past, Aster had never done this before. She only did it once in a fit of pique when she was jealous of Wendy. But this time in front of Noah, Aster showed her thighs that had always been tightly protected. This was enough to make Noah feel bewildered. Aster, who had removed her knee socks, was still riding on Noah's body. Her white and smooth thighs couldn't help but tremble slightly. Her petite and slender body was curled up into a ball, and her face was flushed red. This way Master will be happy, right? Obviously, Aster was really shy. Aster. Noah could only stare blankly at Aster. Why? If it was in the past, even if the other party was Noah, Aster would never do this. What was going on? Perhaps because she heard the confusion in Noah's voice. Aster looked straight at Noah. Although her face was flushed due to shyness, Aster still said this sentence. Because Master's mood seems to be very bad, so Aster wants to make Master happy. This sentence made Noah instantly speechless. Master. Aster once again moved her face closer to Noah, as if she wanted to see something from Noah's eyes. She stared straight into Noah's eyes. Are you blaming yourself? This time Noah was silent. Seeing Noah like this, Aster's eyes flickered as she spoke out Noah's thoughts. Does Master feel that it's entirely his fault that vampire called Satya's mind was controlled? It had to be said that Aster guessed correctly. This was the reason why Noah's mood was so unusually anxious. This was because Noah was the one who ordered the NPCs in the Great Graveyard of Nasarick to capture the Celian cult's people. This order caused Satya to be mentally controlled by the Celian theocracy, turning her into a marionette. If Noah hadn't underestimated the Celian theocracy and thought that he could easily take them down with the power of the NPCs in Nazarick's underground tomb, Satya wouldn't have ended up in such a state. As a result, Noah's order caused Zaisha to become a traitor in the eyes of the NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nasarick. She was an unforgivable target and could not help but become a puppet, falling to such a state. For Satya, this was a very painful thing. After all, the more loyal one was, the more painful it would be to be considered a traitor, right? Noah was even a little afraid. When Satya recovered and found out that she was once a traitor, how painful would it be? Not to mention, in order to let Satya recover, Noah had to fight with the innocent Satya because of his wrong order. Otherwise, he could only allow the NPCs in the Great Tomb of Nasariq to surround and kill Shadia. How could Noah be in a good mood? Master didn't do anything wrong, Aster said as he looked at Noah. Master didn't know that the 6 great gods of the Scythian theocracy were players. Nor did he know that the Scythian theocracy had a world-class item. There's no reason to say that it was Master's fault when he gave such an order. You don't have to comfort me, Aster. Noah stretched out his hand and stroked Aster's head with a bitter expression. No matter what, Satya became like that because of my order. It's not too much to say that I caused Satya to be hated by the rest of the people in the tomb. Of course, I also know that now isn't the time to feel guilty. Noah smiled. So give me a little more time, okay? I understand. Aster pondered for a moment, then said. Then let me make Master feel better. Chapter 12:21. Make me feel better? Aster's words made Noah more or less stunned. But before Noah could react, Aster, who was riding on Noah, suddenly lowered his body, closed his eyes and lightly kissed Noah's lips. Chirp. With a soft sound, Aster's delicate lips parted. However, the touch of those soft lips lingered in Noah's heart for a long time. How is it? Aster continued to stare at Noah's eyes, his eyes filled with mystery. Can this make Master feel better? Hearing this, Noah snapped out of his daze and laughed bitterly. Where did you learn this trick? In the guild. Aster said. When Mira and Lys-Anna treat Master like this, Master's mood will become better. Is that so? Noah suddenly felt a little awkward. How come I don't know? But Aster knows. Aster looked at Noah expressionlessly. And Aster knows that Master's mood is the best when you mate with Mira and Lys-Anna. Don't say things like that. Noah was shaken. I say, Aster, don't tell me you've been watching from the side all this time? Watching? Aster tilted his head. Are you referring to the process of Master mating with Mira and Lys-Anna? I told you don't talk about mating. Noah's voice was a little louder than usual. Tell me the truth, Aster. Have you been watching from the side all this time? That's not right, Master. Aster shook his head and looked at Noah. Aster didn't peek, he looked at it openly. The corners of Noah's mouth twitched slightly. If that was the case, then it wasn't wrong. After all, Aster had always been in the form of a dagger, and was carried around by Noah. Even when Noah was having fun with Mira and Lys-Anna, Aster, who had transformed into a small sword, was left to the side. In other words, if Noah really did it under the eyes of this sword spirit girl, it would definitely lead the child astray. And it wasn't just once. Mira and Lys-Anna definitely can't know about this. If Mira and Lys-Anna were to find out about it, those 2 delicate fiancés would probably never allow Noah to hug them again before they got married, right? While Noah was feeling a little ashamed, Aster continued with his shocking words. If it can make Master's mood better, then Aster will mate with Master too. Noah almost spat out a mouthful of blood. His expression was one of wonder. It was unknown how Aster understood Noah's expression, but the young sword spirit girl leaned over and kissed Noah's lips once more. Then, like a bird pecking at its food, she repeatedly kissed Noah's lips. In short, although Aster's appearance was young and her figure was immature, it didn't mean that she wasn't charming. Just like in many legends as an elf, Aster had a stunning appearance that ordinary humans couldn't have. It was enough to make any man, both physically and mentally healthy, howl. Under such circumstances, Aster was still kissing Noah as if she was throwing herself into his arms. She looked like she didn't care even if she was pushed down. It had to be said that even Noah almost lost his mind. Noah, who was afraid of himself, hurriedly pushed away Aster's astonishingly slender shoulder while he was still rational. Then, he opened his mouth without giving Aster a chance to explain. All right, Aster, if this continues it won't be good. So let's just leave it like this, okay? Hearing this, Aster's expression did not change at all, but a hint of dissatisfaction appeared in his mysterious eyes. Then Aster stared at Noah and said, You're the one who's going to die. Undoubtedly, Master will be very happy if Mira and Lys-Anna treat Master like this. Can't I? If there was a third person present upon hearing Aster's words, they would definitely think that Noah was an inhumane scum who abandoned his wife after using her, right? Noah could only cover his face and couldn't say anything. Aster, you're still young, so you can't think about these things, okay? However, this didn't convince Aster at all. I already existed 1,000 years ago. Aster stared at Noah. According to my memories, no matter which world it is, there shouldn't be a human that has existed longer than me. Can't you consider it from the outside? No. Why? Because I'm Master's beloved sword. It's natural for me to become Master's possession. But you're already considered mine, right? Didn't we promise to be together forever? If that's the case, then Master should take everything away from me. Can't you reconsider? No. Why? Because it's very unfair. Noah finally reacted. He almost forgot. What this sword spirit girl hated the most was unfairness and differential treatment. Aster must be jealous of Noah's intimate attitude towards Mira and Lisanna. Please close your eyes, Master. Aster once again moved her tender face towards Noah. Just leave everything to me, Yizichin said. Wasn't the person who was supposed to say this line backwards? Seeing Aster close her eyes, pouting her lips, and her cute face getting closer and closer, Noah, who was at the end of his rope, started to give up on himself. Why not just make the best of it? When this choice that meant Noah would lose something important to him forever sprouted in his heart, and when Aster's lips were about to touch Noah's lips once more, even the heavens couldn't stand it anymore. Bam! Following a loud sound, Noah's bedroom door was forcefully slammed open. Then a black aura that caused the entire room to tremble suddenly filled the air. Noah, who was startled, quickly turned his head and looked in the direction of the door. There, Yerbade maintained the posture of pushing the door open. Her head was lowered, and the fringe in front of her forehead covered her beautiful face, making it impossible to see her expression. However, the black aura that surged out of Yerbade's body caused a sinister wind to blow through the room, causing Noah's hair to stand on end. Aster, on the other hand, opened her eyes. She first glanced at Yerbade, who was emitting black aura at the door, and then looked back at Noah as if nothing had happened. She reached out and hugged Noah's neck. Master, we've been discovered. That monotonous voice sounded like the greatest provocation to Yerbade's ears. As a result, Yerbade's delicate body began to tremble. The pair of fallen angel wings on her back also began to tremble. The black gas that surged out of her body became even denser. She looked like a ferocious beast that was about to break free from its cage. It made people feel an astonishing ferocious aura. Noah couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Then Yerbade abruptly raised her head, revealing a face that could make any man drool, right in front of Noah's eyes. However, that beautiful face of hers in the past was now filled with a horrifying expression that would wake up any man who was infatuated with Yerbade's beauty in an instant. Lord Noah. Yerbade walked unsteadily towards Noah like a zombie. Undoubtedly I can do it any time I want, but you've rejected me time and time again. Now you're hiding in your room and doing something so enviable with that elf over there. Lord Noah, don't you think this is really unfair? Looking at Yerbade's cursed body, Noah's heart trembled with fear. Calm down, Yerbade. Anyway, calm down first, okay? Yerbade's beautiful face twisted. How am I supposed to calm down? An astonishing roar reverberated throughout the underground 9th floor of the Nasaric underground tomb. Chapter 1222. After the fight between Aster and Yerbade, although Noah was in an extremely sorry state, it had to be said that his mood had improved a lot. Although he still felt extremely guilty about what had happened to Xiaotaya, Noah wasn't a sloppy person to begin with. He understood that if he blindly blamed himself and felt guilty, it wouldn't change the current situation at all. Therefore, after the fight between Aster and Yerbade, Noah calmed down a little and suppressed his guilt toward Shadia. No matter what, he had to let Shadia return to her original state first. After Xiaotaya recovered, he would compensate her. Thinking of this, Noah calmed down and came out of the bedroom. How is it? In the office, Noah, who was sitting in a black leather chair, looked through the luxurious desk in front of him and cast his gaze on Demiurgo standing in front of him. Did you find an ambush by the Celian theocracy around Shadia? After Satya was mentally controlled, she was thrown to the ground. She didn't receive any orders and stayed there alone. The current Shadia was like a monster that appeared in the wild in a game. As long as someone approached, she would attack. As long as someone attacked, she would counterattack. If one ignored Shadia and went around her, she would also be like a monster that appeared in the wild in a game. She would only stay in one place and would not react. The reason for this situation was that Shadia did not receive the orders of the ruler after being mentally controlled. Previously, Yerbade guessed that the reason why Shadia did not receive the order was that the final counterattack knocked down the ruler. However, it was also possible that the ruler deliberately did not give Shadia an order and let her stay in the wild to lure out her companions. In addition, the main body of the world-class item that caused Shadia to be mentally controlled was still unknown. If one recklessly came into contact with Shadia, it was very likely that it would cause a chain reaction or trigger the triggering condition of the world-class item and trigger the power of mental control again. Due to various considerations, it was definitely not beneficial to come into contact with Shadia before the investigation was clear. In view of this, when Noah returned, he had Demyugos in charge of investigating Zacia's surroundings. Lord Noah, we have indeed discovered some abnormalities. Demyugos lowered his head and said respectfully, although we didn't discover any ambushes from the Celian theocracy in Zatia's surroundings, we discovered that someone was using intelligence magic to monitor Zatia's surroundings. As expected, Noah curled his lips. That's normal. I would be surprised if there was no surveillance. It didn't matter if they had intentionally left Shadia in the wilderness to ambush her, or if they had been killed by Shadia's desperate counterattack and had lost the ability to control her. The Syrian theocracy who had left Shadia in the wilderness would definitely keep an eye on her. Even the members of the sacred scripture of Sunshine, who were supposed to be his companions, were under the surveillance of the Syrian theocracy, let alone an actual enemy like Zacia. However, the Syrian theocracy's surveillance shouldn't have existed since the beginning, right? Noah knocked on the table in front of him. When I went to Zatia's side, I didn't feel like I was being watched. That's not the case, Lord Noah. After we discovered Zatia's abnormality, we sent troops to investigate. At that time, we had already discovered that a third party was using intelligence magic to monitor Zatia, Demyugos said. In order to prevent the information from leaking, we set up a barrier around Zatia that can block the detection of intelligence magic. Please forgive us for acting on our own accord. No, you did the right thing. You did nothing wrong. Noah shook his head. Then, apart from that, what other measures did you take? At first, it was only to this extent. Now, we are continuously setting up barriers around Zatia that can block the activation of teleportation magic to prevent the enemy from using teleportation magic to launch a sneak attack while we are dealing with Zatia. Demyugos pushed up his glasses. Also, although we have confirmed that there are no ambushes around Zatia, we have yet to confirm whether there are any magic traps around Zatia. We are currently organizing an investigation team to eliminate them. In addition, considering that the enemy might be borrowing the power of magic tools, we are also preparing to set up measures against magic tools around Zatia, Demyugos said cautiously. Currently, that's all we can think of for the time being. What do you think, Lord Noah? Let's organize another team that can use detection and intelligence magic, Noah added after pondering for a moment. Although we've taken sufficient measures against outsiders, we still need to spend some effort on Satya. We need to get someone who can use detection magic to investigate Satya's situation. Otherwise, if we attack Satya rashly, it's very likely that we'll trigger a world-class tool mind control. That's not necessarily the case. Understood. Demyugos nodded solemnly. Regardless of whether there was an ambush by the Celian theocracy around Zatia, Zatia's mind control was an extremely serious problem. Even Zatia, a level 100 NPC who was undying, was affected by mind control. In that case, there was probably no one in the large underground tomb in Nasaric who could resist the same effect. If a second person was affected by mind control, it would be troublesome. After all, no one knew if the world-class item used on Zatia would have the same effect on people who were too close to her. Therefore, he had to be very careful with his detection. In addition, it is very likely that the other party has obtained some information about the large underground tomb in Nasaric from Zatia. Noah glanced at Demyugos. Therefore, put the entire large underground tomb in Nasaric on alert. Yes. Demyugos nodded his head obediently and replied. By the way, Lord Noah, we have arranged spies around Zatia according to your instructions. We have discovered that Yilantil, who is the closest to here, seems to be moving. Yilantil. Noah frowned. What's the matter? I guess the battle between Zatia and the Celian theocracy has attracted Yilantil's attention, Demugos said. According to the informant, Yilantil has already sent out adventurers to attack the powerful magical creature that appeared near Khan village. The target of the attack is very likely Zatia. Oh. Noah looked at Demugos. Why are you so sure that the other party is planning to attack Zatia? There are 2 reasons, Demugos replied respectfully. First, the scale of the adventurers sent by the other party is very large. In the vicinity, it is impossible that there would be a target that requires such a large team to attack other than Zatia. Second, the other party's route is completely in the direction of Khan village. There is no mistake. A team of adventurers? Noah asked thoughtfully. What kind of scale? All of them are at least silver rank, Demugos said. In terms of teams, there are 30 silver rank adventurers teams, 10 gold rank adventurers teams, 5 platinum rank adventurers teams, and 3 secret silver adventurers teams. The total number of people is more than 200. This scale is indeed not used to attack ordinary magical creatures. Noah smacked his lips. Really, one wave after another. After saying that, Noah stood up and glanced in the direction of the corner as he spoke helplessly. He helplessly said, Yerbade, how long are you going to maintain that appearance? Yerbade, who was curled up in the corner like a child with his back facing them, turned his head slightly. His beautiful face was filled with tears. Obviously, Yerbade was still concerned about the matter between Noah and Aster. At that moment, Noah sighed and walked in the direction of the door. Yerbade, if you plan to continue like that, then I won't bring you out. Hearing that, Yerbade jumped up as if he was flying. While flapping the wings on his back, he chased after Noah. Seeing this, Demugos hurriedly followed. Chapter 12:23. The warm sunlight shone down from the sky and shone on the seemingly endless plains. The earth seemed to be dyed with a layer of golden color. It was unusually dazzling. At a certain moment on the edge of such a plain, a group of people riding horses quietly appeared. It was a group of people wearing completely different equipment. Rather than a group of people, it was better to say that it was a group of people forced together by several groups of people to move together. The number of these people was about 200. Moreover, they were basically all men. And these people all had one thing in common. That was, on their necks they all wore a metal plate. Some wore metal plates made of silver. Some wore metal plates made of gold. There were even some who were wearing precious metal plates made of platinum. Under the sunlight, the metal plates glowed with dazzling colors. In this world, there was only one kind of human who would wear metal plates like this. That was the adventurers. These people riding horses, galloping from the edge of the plain, were all adventurers. Moreover, they were adventurers who were at least silver level and above. In such a group of adventurers who were at least silver level, there were also gold level adventurers, and there were even platinum level adventurers. This was a very rare scene. Because, generally speaking, whether it was a kingdom, an empire, or a theocracy, the adventurers of platinum level and above accounted for about 20% of the adventurers in the country. And in the kingdom, the number of adventurers was about 3,000 people. Based on this ratio in the kingdom, there were only about 600 adventurers of platinum level and above. In this way, perhaps it did not reflect the preciousness of the adventurers of platinum level and above. But if this data was compared to the population of the kingdom, it was much more obvious. According to estimates, the total population of the kingdom was more than 8 million. Among these 8 million people, there were only 3,000 adventurers, and only 600 adventurers of platinum level and above. If this was the case, then it was understandable, right? That was right. There were so few adventurers of platinum level and above. But in this group of people, there were at least 30 platinum level adventurers. In addition to the rest of the silver level and gold level adventurers, the strength of the group was already to the point that it was not strange to use them in a war. But this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that at the front of this group of people, there were 3 adventurer teams wearing even more noble metal plates. It was a metal plate made of mithril. In other words, at the front of this group of people, There were 3 mithril adventurer teams that were above platinum level adventurers: Kraugla, Sky Wolf, Rainbow. These 3 teams of mithril adventurers were the strongest adventurer teams in Yelantir. However, Yelantir didn't have any mountain copper rank that was higher than mithril rank. As for the highest grade, the fine steel grade, there were only 2 in the entire kingdom. It was even more impossible for Yelantil to have one. Yelantir's adventurers teams, Yelantir's adventurer teams, Yelantir of Yelantir's adventurer teams, Yelantir. In this way, the leaders of the 3 mithril adventurer teams became the leaders of the entire adventurer team. They were the 3 strong men who took the lead and charged at the front of the large group. Kraugla's leader, Igvok. Skywolf's leader, Palati. Rainbow's leader, Moknak. The leaders of the 3 mithril adventurer teams showed their leadership at this time. They rode their horses and rode at the front of the large group, leading the large group of adventurers that totaled more than 200 as they galloped on the boundless plains. Rumble. Numerous sounds of horse hooves converged together, forming a rumbling sound that made the earth tremble. Dense smoke and dust rose behind the group of horses as the large adventurer team galloped, filling the space of the plains. Looking at the vast momentum, it really gave people a feeling that even if they were fighting on the battlefield, these 200 people would be able to flatten a vast army. It was precisely because this large group of adventurers was so large that some people were puzzled. Such a large group, it should be enough to go against the army of the Empire, right? Igvok smacked his lips. It's just to deal with a mere monster. Is there a need to mobilize such a large group of adventurers? In order to better suppress monsters and prevent humans from being harmed by monsters, almost every city's adventurers guild would regularly organize magic chanters who were proficient in intelligence magic to explore the surrounding areas of the city. From there, they would find the settlements of various monster tribes and the location of powerful monsters. A few days ago, the Adventurers Guild just happened to conduct a survey. As a result, they found that there was an individual with an astonishing magic reaction in this area. That terrifying magic reaction was definitely not at the level that a human could have. And after further investigation, the Adventurers Guild also confirmed that individual was not a human, but an undead that hated the living. Therefore, the entire Adventurers Guild fell into chaos and an emergency meeting was held. Those who participated in the meeting were not only the Guild Master of the Adventurers Guild, but also the Guild Master of the Mages Guild and the Mayor of the city in Yelantir, as well as the leaders of the 3 most advanced mithril adventurer teams in the city. After a round of discussion, the entire upper echelon of Yelantir felt that it was too dangerous to allow the undead with an astonishing magic reaction to continue existing. The undead generally hated the living. If they were allowed to continue existing, perhaps the other party would use its terrifying power to carry out a massacre in the surroundings, to the extent that it would threaten the safety of the entire Yelantir city. In view of this, the Adventurers Guild, the Mages Guild, and the mayor of the city all decided to jointly fund and hire a large number of high-level adventurer teams, including 3 mithril adventurer teams, to form a large team to crusade against the monster that appeared near Khan village. Igvok had always felt disdain towards this. It's just an undead, not a giant snake monster. Isn't it too much of a fuss to actually mobilize so many people? The undead were basically born from death. Moreover, in the beginning, it was basically impossible for an overly powerful undead to be born. The existence of the undead was actually like a venomous worm. Only in a large number of undead would there be a high possibility of an even more powerful undead being born. Therefore, under normal circumstances, the powerful undead would be surrounded by an extremely large number of low-level undead. There were very few powerful undead that existed individually. Therefore, knowing that the opponent this time was only a single undead, Igvok was so disdainful. It had to be said that Igvok's arrogant speech made the leaders of the other 2 mithril adventurer teams very unhappy. Moreover, this was not the first time Igvok had spoken like this. At that moment, Parodi and Moknak, who were also the leaders, looked at each other and said what they had said countless times before. Since the Adventurers Guild and the Mages Guild have already used the intelligence magic to confirm, then there's definitely no mistake. We can't be careless. Otherwise, it wouldn't be strange if we were to die at any time. Igvok let out a cold snort when he heard Parodi and Moknak's words. I say, no matter what, you guys are the leaders of mithril adventure teams like me. Isn't it too embarrassing to be so afraid of an undead? Such a sentence made Parodi and Moknak furious. However, considering the harmony of the team, the leaders of the two Mithril adventurer teams chose to tolerate it. After all, they were not as arrogant and foolish as Igvok. "Let's cut the crap," Parodi said with a straight face. "We're almost at our destination. If we continue to complain, it would be too embarrassing for us as adventurers. It's time for the people behind to prepare for battle," Moknak said in a similarly unfriendly tone. "Don't be caught off guard by the enemy and cause unnecessary casualties." Igvok turned his head away without saying anything. However, when he turned his head away, Igvok was suddenly startled and exclaimed in surprise, "What's that?" As soon as he said that, Wong! A huge magic light beam suddenly shot out from the front. Chapter 1224. Amidst the reverberations of space, a gigantic magical beam that was about 2 meters in diameter abruptly appeared over the boundless plains. It cut through space, rubbing against the air as it streaked straight towards the group of adventurers. The group of adventurers didn't even have time to react before the huge mana beam suddenly shot over and landed on the ground not far in front of Igvaki, Parodi, and Moknak. The sudden appearance of the magical beam didn't directly bombard the ground. Instead, it was like a laser that swept across the ground in front of the group of adventurers. Boom! 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 In an instant, wherever the laser-like magic power beam swept across the ground was blasted apart, setting off astonishing shockwaves in sand. Pieces of gravel shot out in all directions like bullets fired from a gun. The sudden huge commotion caused the horses carrying the adventurers to let out frightened neighs. Without the consent of the riders, they abruptly stopped, straightened their upper bodies, and kicked their powerful front legs in midair. The adventurers riding on the horses all fell down one by one due to the violent movements of the horses in a state of panic and landed heavily on the ground, letting out painful groans. In just a short while, the group of adventurers who were advancing on the plains like a vast army fell into a state of panic. Some of the adventurers were even trampled by the violent horses. If it weren't for the fact that these adventurers were strong and equipped with a certain degree of equipment, they would definitely have been injured under the hooves of the horses. Now, they were considered lucky that they were only in a state of chaos. "Don't panic!" Parodi, who also fell from his horse, hurriedly yelled. "Everyone calm down. Quickly adjust your posture. Prepare for battle." Moknak also yelled. "It's very likely that the enemy has already attacked." From this point of view, Parodi and Moknak were indeed the leaders of the Secret Silver Adventurers team. They were calm in the face of danger, and had the mentality to deal with any unexpected situation. Only Igvaki, instead of paying attention to his companions, focused more on the attacker who made a fool of himself. "Who's there?" Igvaki roared furiously at his surroundings. "Who's playing tricks here? Come out!" Igvaki's voice turned into an echo that reverberated in the sky above the plains. About 2 to 3 seconds later, a voice that was so cold that it was close to terrifying reverberated in the space in response to Igvaki's words. "How dare you speak to our Supreme Honorable like that? You deserve to die." Along with this sentence, a terrifying evil aura expanded in the entire space. It was a terrifying aura like that of a ferocious ghost that emerged from hell. Bathed in such a terrifying aura, all the adventurers from your lantern present stiffened. Their faces turned ghastly pale in an instant. They looked as though they were being stared at by a ferocious beast and didn't even dare to move. Soon after, the sand and dust that filled the entire space gradually settled down, allowing the frozen adventurers to see the scene in front of them clearly. It was only then that all the adventurers present saw it. There was a rock about 100 meters in front of them. There were figures standing around the rock. Although they were more than 100 meters away, the adventurers could still see the full appearance of those figures clearly. The first thing that caught the attention of all the adventurers present was a figure that made all the pale-faced adventurers widen their eyes in shock. It was a young girl. She seemed to be guarding the side of the rock and was standing under the rock. She was the closest to the rock. The young girl's appearance could be said to be breathtaking. She was so beautiful that it was truly tragic. She even had a gentle smile on her face, as though she was a goddess that descended from the sky. However, behind such a goddess, there was a pair of pitch-black wings near her lower waist. It was that pair of pitch-black wings that made all the adventurers tremble. Looking at that beautiful figure that was both sacred and evil, Parodi inadvertently murmured, "Demon! Demon! A demon that brought destruction with violence. A demon that brought about depravity with wisdom." This kind of otherworldly existence was collectively known as the demon. It was said that it was an extremely ferocious and evil demon. The meaning of its existence was to eliminate all the good people who had reason. It was also the so-called synonym for evil. Among the people present, there was almost no one who didn't know about the existence of the demon. It was because more than 200 years ago, it brought a huge disaster to the world and was finally eliminated by the 13 heroes. The evil existence known as the demon god was the king of the demon. This demon king led an army of demons and almost wiped out all the intelligent races in this world. If the undead were demons that hated the living, then the demon would be demons that tortured the living. If they encountered the undead, they would at most die. But if they encountered the demon, they would truly be better off dead. Who wouldn't be afraid of such an existence? What's more, the demon there wasn't just the unbelievably beautiful young girl alone. Not far from the girl, there was a man with a long steel tail, wearing a strange suit, and looking like an ordinary human male. Although he looked like a human male, the steel tail behind him and the evil aura that pervaded his body told everyone present that he wasn't a human. He was definitely not a human but a demon. On the other side of the demon couple, on the other side of the rock, there was a pair of dark elf twins. A pair of demons. A pair of dark elves. The two waited on both sides of the rock, facing forward. Furthermore, there were two other figures standing there. One of them was an old man who was over 50 years old and wore a butler's uniform, but his back was extremely straight. The other had a terrifying appearance. His appearance was like an ant, but also like an insect, and his entire body was covered in the color of ice. These people surrounded the ordinary-looking rock in the middle, as if they were protecting something. They expressionlessly looked in the direction of the adventurers. Then, on the rock surrounded by these beings, a person sat on it. It was a young man with black hair and black eyes, wearing pitch-black casual clothes and a white coat. Compared to the existences below the rock, the young man didn't have a terrifying appearance. However, judging from the support of those terrifying existences, the young man sitting at the top was clearly the one who was leading those terrifying existences. Cold sweat began to appear on the foreheads of the adventurers. The people surrounding the rock emitting terrifying existences and evil auras made the adventurers wail in their hearts, and they constantly had the urge to escape. Such fear made Igvaki shout out loud, Who are you people?" Such a sentence made the evil aura of those terrifying existences surge even more intensely. Mere ants of a lower race. Demugos pushed up his glasses and looked up. "Kneel." Just as Demigo's voice reverberated in the space of the plains, the adventurers who were at least silver rank and above all felt their hearts tremble, and their bodies involuntarily moved. Accompanied by a series of sounds, the adventurers, including Igvaki, Palati, and Moknak, who could rival an army, all involuntarily knelt on the ground. It wasn't because these adventurers were so timid that they were frightened by Demiugo's words. Instead, Demiugo's words contained a magical power that none of them could resist. "This is..." Moknak's expression changed drastically. "Spiritual attack." Yes. The reason why the adventurers involuntarily knelt was because Demiugos had a special ability to make others listen to his orders' domination spell. Looking at the group of adventurers kneeling in unison, Noah, who was sitting on the rock, spoke indifferently. "Adventurers, return to where you belong." Chapter 12:25. Adventurers, return to where you belong. When such a sentence was carried by the wind and drilled into the ears of the adventurers who were kneeling on the ground and were unable to get up no matter what, those adventurers were all startled. Noah, on the other hand, ignored those adventurers' startled expressions and continued speaking as if he was talking to himself. "I know that you intend to deal with the undying that appeared here, but that undying is my servant, and not someone that you should deal with." Servant. The adventurers led by Igvaki, Parodi, and Moknak revealed shocked expressions. In this world, the meaning of the word servant was not ordinary. Usually, if a human called a magical creature their servant, then under normal circumstances, the servant here referred to the summoned magical creature. Just like the Holy Book of Sunlight of the Sea Lian cult, The angels summoned by the magic chanters of the faith system, who were at least able to use third-grade magic, were their servants. Similar situations were not rare. Summoning magic existed in every system of magic. Some magic chanters could use summoning magic to summon goblins. Some magic chanters could use summoning magic to summon ogres. Some magic chanters could use summoning magic to summon lizardmen. Even in legends there were magic chanters who could use summoning magic to summon the most powerful race, the giant dragon. All kinds of magical creatures could be summoned by magic chanters, and controlled and ordered through corresponding magic. Among them, it naturally included the Undying. However, the more powerful the magical creature was, the more advanced the summoning magic would be required to summon it and control it. Now that human sitting on the rock was saying that the powerful Undying that made the entire Yelanter's higher-ups tremble, and that they did not hesitate to send out 3 mithril adventurer teams, 5 platinum-ranked adventurer teams, 10 gold-ranked adventurer teams, and 30 silver-ranked adventurer teams, to form a team of more than 200 people to go on a crusade, was his servant? To be able to summon a magical creature of that level, what kind of magic was that? Thinking of this, all the adventurers trembled. This was because, as previously mentioned, the level of adventurers and the level of magic corresponded. Bronze and iron adventurers were generally equivalent to magic chanters who could use first-grade magic. Silver and gold adventurers were generally equivalent to magic chanters who could use second-grade magic. Platinum-ranked and mithril adventurers were generally equivalent to magic chanters who could use third-grade magic. Platinum-ranked adventurers were generally equivalent to magic chanters who could use fourth-grade magic. Adventurers of the highest level were generally equivalent to magic chanters who could use fifth-grade magic. The strength of the magical creatures summoned by different levels of summoning magic could also be applied to this classification system. First-grade magic could summon magic chanters of bronze or iron level. Second-grade magic could summon of silver or gold rank silver to summon silver, or based on this logic, a fourth-grade summoning spell would be able to summon a bronze-grade monster, while a fifth-grade summoning spell would be able to summon a steel-grade monster. Even the Adventurers Guild had no choice but to send out 3 mithril adventurers to lead a crusade against it. No matter how one looked at it, it should be stronger than mithril adventurers, right? And to send out such a large number of adventurers, it couldn't just summon magic of bronze level, right? It was even possible that magic of bronze level was stronger than magic of steel level. Summoning magic that could summon magic of bronze level? Conservatively speaking, it had to be the highest level of magic that humans could control, which was the 6th grade magic of bronze level. This youth, who looked to be around 20 years old, was a magic chanter who could use 6th grade magic? That's impossible. Igvaki cried out loudly. There is no one who can use 6th grade magic in the kingdom. There is only one in the empire. Do you think I will believe your nonsense? Igvok's words made the NPCs guarding the Nasaric tomb next to the rock Noah was sitting on focus their gazes on him. Those gazes were filled with an unprecedented murderous aura. Igvok, who was only secret silver level and had not even reached level 20, was targeted by the murderous aura of 6th level 100 NPCs. His vision turned black and his chest tightened. His blood began to surge. If this continued, Igvaki would definitely spit out a mouthful of blood, right? Fortunately, Noah's voice saved Igvok. Whether you believe it or not has nothing to do with me. I am just giving you some advice because I know a few people in the kingdom who are also adventurers. Noah glanced at Igvok. There is a problem with my servant. She no longer obeys my orders. I can't control her for the time being. If you want to come over, I won't stop you. But what happens to you has nothing to do with me. All of the NPCs in Nazaric's underground tomb smiled at the sight of this. It was a smile that was directly linked to cruelty. That smile made all the adventurers feel like they were not far from death. For a moment they were completely frozen in place, unable to move. The only ones who could remain calm were Paladi and Moknak. The leaders of the 2 secret silver adventurers looked at each other, then looked at Noah. Parodi carefully asked, as if he was offering his respect. Can we ask for your name, sir? Why? Noah looked at Paladi with a faint smile. Since you can't resist, you should at least find out about my background and report back? Paladi's expression froze. Obviously Noah was right. We definitely don't mean to suspect you. Moknak quickly spoke up for Paladi. We just want to know the name of the person who can have such a powerful Undying as your servant. All right, there is no need for flattery. I am just giving you a piece of advice, Noah said indifferently. Moreover, my servant is now under the control of an unknown spirit. I am also worried about how to deal with her. I don't want to be disturbed by outsiders. Do you understand what I mean? Noah pursed his lips. Or rather, you can do me a big favor and help me investigate the situation of that disobedient servant. Paladi and Machnak immediately shut their mouths. Only Igvaki stared at Noah with resentment. The fear in his heart turned into extreme anger under Noah's superior attitude, causing him to mock him. I think you are a human traitor who defected to the Undying. You plan to collude with the Undying to harm us humans, right? The NPCs in the Nasaric underground tomb suddenly raised their heads. Their eyes were filled with violent murderous intent again. However, this time, before the NPCs in the Nasaric underground tomb locked their murderous intent on Igvaki, Noah looked directly at the guy who did not even understand that a wise man submits to circumstances. If humans are as stupid as you, then there must be many traitors who want to defect to the Undying, right? Igvaki's eyes were filled with anger. Just as he was about to say something, Noah beat him to it. Anyway, that's all I want to say. If you don't want to die, it's best that you don't come here. Go back to Yelantir and tell the people of the kingdom not to interfere with the matters here. After saying that, Noah looked at Igvaki. His pitch-black eyes suddenly turned a cold, silver-white color. Also, you really make people feel very uncomfortable. As these words were spoken, Igvaki's body gradually turned into steel under the gaze of the ice-cold silver-white eyes. What? What is this? No. Stop. Ah! As he screamed, Igvaki turned into cold steel. The fear on his face froze and he became a statue. Ah! The group of adventurers finally let out sorrowful cries out of fear. Chapter 12:26. On the rock, Noah looked at the group of adventurers riding their horses at a speed faster than when they came, as if they were running for their lives. His expression did not change much from the beginning to the end. Lord Noah, Demiurgo said softly, forgive me for being blunt, but why didn't Lord Noah kill all those inferior humans? Most of the NPCs in Nazaric's underground tomb nodded in agreement. They had the same idea as Demigos. Because of Zacia's matter, Noah had the people of Nazaric's underground tomb completely seal off the surrounding area. Even though it was just a vast grassland, who knew how many monsters from Nazaric's underground tomb were hiding here? Just now, if Noah hadn't appeared and the human adventurers stepped into this area, the monsters hiding in the dark would have suddenly launched an attack and killed all the adventurers. No one doubted that any of the adventurers would be able to escape. After all, compared to the monsters in the underground tomb, the humans in this world were generally not very strong. Even good Jefu, who was known as the strongest warrior in the kingdom, was only level 35. Among the humans, there wasn't even a single magician who could use 7th level spells. How could they fight against the monsters in the underground tomb? In Nazaric's underground tomb, even the monsters that could respawn and appear on their own were only around level 30. With the power of humans, they were no match for most of the magical creatures that could regenerate and appear on their own, not to mention the high-level magical creatures that required money to summon. The monster that had sealed off the area was precisely this type of high-level monster. Among them, the lowest level was level 60, and the highest was level 85. Moreover, there were more than 300 level 60 monsters. Although there weren't that many level 85 monsters, there were still 3 lying in ambush around Zatia. In this world, there was almost no one who could break through such a force. It would be very easy for them to kill the human adventurers who weren't even level 20. The NPCs in Nazaric's underground graveyard couldn't understand why Noah would show up and let these people go. In response, Noah did not hide anything and directly spoke his thoughts. I already said that it's just a piece of advice. I'll only do it this once. After saying that, Noah looked at Igvaki, who had turned into cold steel, and closed his eyes. If they ignore my words and still want to come, then I won't be merciful. Noah really couldn't stand the indiscriminate killing of the innocent. That was why Noah had specially made a trip to give the adventurers a piece of advice. Now he had given the advice. If the adventurers didn't intend to listen and still wanted to interfere, then Noah wouldn't be so idle as to put on airs in front of them. To this extent, he had already done his utmost benevolence. Everyone had to be responsible for their own choices. It was just like how Noah had chosen to let the NPCs in the underground tomb of Nasarek capture the people of the Celian theocracy alive. In the end, it caused Zatia to be mentally dominated and fall to the point where she had no choice but to fight with Zatia. Demiurgos. At that moment, Noah asked Demiurgos softly, "The defense network should be more or less built, right?" "Yes." Demiurgos lowered his head and bowed slightly. "Whether it's the defensive wall to block intelligence magic or teleportation magic, it has been built. The magic traps and magic tools have also been set up. In addition, the monsters in the underground tomb of Nasarek have sealed the surrounding area. Considering the power of the creatures in this world, we can rest assured that we can act on Zatia's matter." "Is that so?" Noah continued to ask. "Then, have you investigated clearly? If you come into contact with Zatia, will it trigger the same mental domination power?" "This? We haven't investigated clearly yet." Demiurgos seemed to find it difficult to speak, as if blaming himself for not doing a good job. He lowered his head even more. "Although we haven't discovered anything yet, we can't rule out the possibility that if we come into contact with Zatia, the world-class tool that can control Zatia's mind won't be triggered and affect the people who come into contact with her." "Is that so?" Noah opened his eyes, looked in Zatia's direction and murmured, "You still can't be sure?" "I'm really sorry." Demiurgos bowed deeply. "Lord Noah, please give me a little more time. 3 days will be enough. I'll definitely give the Supreme Lord a satisfactory answer." "No need," Noah said indifferently. "You don't have to interfere with Zatia's matter. Let me handle it." "What?" Demiurgos' expression changed. It wasn't just Demiurgos. Even the other NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nasarek were shocked. "Please wait." Yerbait stepped forward and hurriedly said, "That's too dangerous." "That's right, Lord Noah." Yauda also hurriedly said, "We haven't confirmed whether the same mental domination power will affect the people who come into contact with that idiot Zatia, right?" That's too dangerous," Malay said timidly. Lord Noah, why don't you reconsider?" "This subordinate also thinks that it's inappropriate," Seabass said seriously. "If Lord Noah is also affected by mental domination, what should we do?" "There's no reason for the Supreme Lord to personally take the risk," Kassit said in a deep voice. "Even if we want to suppress Zatia, we should be the ones to do it." The NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nasarek all voiced their objections. The objections made Noah smile bitterly. "I'll tell you the truth." Noah looked at the NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nasarek and said, "Mental domination is ineffective against me, even if it's the power of a world item." The reason why they were so sure was because Noah had 2 special characteristics. The first was the curse resistance of the God Slayer. It was a foul physique that could repel all mysteries other than those that could affect gods. Unless he could control a god, the mind control used on Satya was ineffective on Noah. Even if the mind domination couldn't nullify the curse resistance of the God Slayer, Noah still had the 3 great constitutions. One of the 3 great constitutions allowed Noah to be immune to any negative effects. The effects on the mind were also in the same category. To be honest, I'm not afraid of the mind domination of a world item, nor am I afraid that the Syrian theocracy will come out of nowhere. I asked you to make so many arrangements because I'm worried that the Syrian theocracy might still be secretly controlling Zatia and have to be cut off. Another reason is that I don't want to be disturbed." Noah was silent for a while. Then he finally said what was on his mind. "In addition, I also need some time to reflect on myself for causing Zatia's mind domination. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had to wait until now to deal with Zatia." The NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nasarek fell silent. In fact, everyone present knew that Noah didn't make so many arrangements just for the reasons he said. There was another, most important reason, which was for his subordinates. The mind domination that could work on Zatia would definitely work on the other NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nasarek. In order to prevent the others from falling into the same mind domination, Noah had to make so many arrangements to avoid being schemed against by the Syrian theocracy. As for Noah himself, he wasn't afraid of the mind domination or the Syrian theocracy's ambush. If it weren't for the other NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nasarek, he could have just crushed them and dealt with Zatia's matter. After all, even if Noah did not use the Demon Slayer and the Gate of Babylon, he would still be able to reach the maximum level of 100. There was no need for him to worry so much. In other words, it was Nasarick who was holding Noah back. After understanding this, the NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nasarick were filled with dark emotions. Not only was he of no use, but he was also a hindrance to the person he was willing to give everything to. He was resentful of himself. Yerbade couldn't help but say this because of this feeling. Lord Noah, please leave the matter of suppressing Zatia to us. No, leave it to me alone. If I show signs of mind domination, I'll kill myself. The eyes of the other NPCs lit up. It was obvious that Yerbade's suggestion had tempted the others. As for death, it wasn't scary at all for these NPCs. What the NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nasarick were really afraid of was not being able to serve Noah and disappointing Noah. Understanding this, Noah couldn't say anything to reprimand him. However, that didn't mean that Noah would agree. Zatia was under mind domination because of my orders. Noah looked at everyone present. I want to deal with this matter personally. His unquestionable tone made the NPCs unable to refute. Only then did Noah turn his head and look in a certain direction. Zatia was there. Chapter 12:27. Whoosh! A cold breeze blew across the vast plain, causing the clouds in the sky to move with the wind and cover the sun. The ground that was originally illuminated by the sun began to be covered with a layer of shadow. Under such circumstances, the noble princess like Satya was still like a marionette. Her body was hanging down as if she was suspended by an invisible string, without any vitality. At a certain moment, a figure flew over like a meteor and landed on the ground not far from Satya. Looking up at Satya, who was hanging there like a marionette, Noah's emotions fluctuated slightly. The guilt he felt towards Satya had been suppressed deep in his heart. If this guilt were to appear before Satya was restored to her original state, it would not be beneficial for the upcoming battle. Therefore, Noah's current emotions were purely a lament for a beautiful thing turning into a lifeless object. It had to be said that in terms of appearance, although Satya looked very young and was far from being as mature as Yerbada, she had an unparalleled charm. Such a beautiful girl had now become a lifeless marionette. Anyone would feel that it was a pity. Noah's emotions were more intense than pure pity. After all, the other party was someone Noah knew. She was someone who was still alive and kicking. Of course, Noah understood. As long as he got close to her or launched an attack, that lifeless doll-like girl would instantly turn into a terrifying beast that surpassed any magical creature in this world. Speaking of which, Satya seems to have always wanted me to whip her. Noah bitterly smiled, and then the bitter smile on his face turned into his usual calmness. Although it's not what I want, Satya, I'll satisfy you today. The moment he said that, Noah's pitch-black eyes suddenly turned into a cold silver-white color. An invisible magic power fluctuated. Following the gaze of the pair of ice-cold silver eyes, it was projected onto Satya, whose upper body was hanging down like a marionette. Paji! 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 Accompanied by the sound of ice freezing, Satya's petite body gradually turned into the color of steel and was covered by cold steel. Noah's cold refinement had the ability to change the strength of the effect, depending on the enemy's strength and level. If it was a small character like Igvaki who had not even reached level 20, it would take less than 3 seconds to turn him into steel. However, as a level 100 existence, Satya could not compare to Igvaki at all. Therefore, when Noah's cold smelting took effect on Satya's body, even after 3 seconds, it could only temper Satya's ankles. In that instant, a dense evil aura, murderous aura, and bloody aura surged out from Satya's body as she hung there like a marionette. Then Noah saw it. Satya, whose upper body was hanging down like a marionette without a trace of vitality, suddenly raised her head. Her pair of empty scarlet eyes quickly emitted a red light, and her coquettish little mouth cracked open as she suddenly burst into laughter. Ha 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 ha! Amidst the pleasant laughter that sounded like silver bells, a pair of bat-like wings suddenly spread out from Satya's back and flapped abruptly. Boom! The charred ground where Satya was standing suddenly exploded. Just like that, the true ancestor of the vampires shot out like an arrow off the line. Riding the wind, she flapped her wings and shot toward Noah with an excited and ferocious smile on her beautiful face. In her hand, a ray of light suddenly bloomed and transformed into a strangely shaped spear that reminded one of the huge pipettes used in chemistry class. It was the only artifact that Satya possessed, the pipette. It was an artifact that could absorb damage to the opponent and use it to recover physical strength and injuries. Ha 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 ha. Amidst a burst of delightful laughter, Zaisha arrived in front of Noah. Under Noah's calm gaze, a bloodthirsty expression appeared on her pretty face as she fiercely stabbed the pike in her hand at Noah. Bang! It was just a simple stab, but a violent shockwave spread out with the pike in Zaisha's hand as the center, setting off a shocking sandstorm that enveloped Noah's entire body. Ahahaha. On the other hand, Zaisha seemed to have completely fallen into a frenzy. While letting out delightful laughter, she repeatedly thrusted the pike in her hand into the thick sand and wind that was stirred up by the shockwave. Immediately, a series of muffled explosive sounds reverberated within the dense sand and dust, causing the atmosphere to wail. The ground also trembled, rolling up a terrifying tornado-like air wave. That scene, in the eyes of the third party, was simply violent to the extreme. However, Zaisha did not show any signs of stopping. She continued to let out delightful laughter as she repeatedly stabbed the pike in her hand, setting off waves of sandstorm that swept in all directions. Lord Noah. In the great underground tomb of Nasariq, a group of NPCs who had returned to the stronghold and used intelligence magic to monitor the battle stood up from their seats one after another. Among them, Yerbel's delicate body even swayed due to her overly violent movements. She looked like she would faint at any moment. At this moment, a projection-like screen appeared in front of the NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nasariq. On the screen, Zaisha laughed maniacally as she repeatedly stabbed the pike in her hand, setting off waves of shocking sandstorm that caused the ground to tremble. The violent scene was presented before everyone's eyes. Sure enough, we shouldn't have let Lord Noah fight alone. Demiurgos no longer had his usual calmness. Instead, there was only endless anxiety on his face. We have to provide support as soon as possible. Wait, Demiurgos. Yerbel's pretty face also had a wavering expression, but she was not as anxious as Demiurgos. She stopped Demiurgos, who was about to leave. That lord won't be in trouble because of an attack of this level. Calm down. But Demiurgos still could not hide the anxiety on his face. Instead, it was Cositas who stared at the scene on the screen and suddenly spoke. Lord Noah isn't injured at all, right? Hearing this, everyone, including Yerbel and Demiurgos, looked at Cositas. Look carefully, said Cositas, with an accent that seemed to be superimposed on each other. Although Zaisha's attack frequency is very high, the pike's ability has not been used even once. After Cositas said this, the other NPCs also noticed this. If Zaisha had dealt actual damage to Noah, it was impossible that the pipette pike that could absorb the damage dealt to the opponent and recover the wielder's stamina and injuries had not been activated. Even the NPCs in the distant Nasariq underground graveyard noticed this, so it was impossible for Zaisha not to have noticed it. Bang! In the midst of the explosion, Zaisha once again stabbed with her pike, causing the sandstorm and violent shockwaves to shake in all directions like an avalanche. This caused the ground to crack inch by inch, spreading cracks everywhere. However, Zaisha's maniacal laughter had already stopped, and the battle-thirsty smile on her face gradually disappeared. Her scarlet eyes stared at the thick sandstorm close at hand, and her grip on her pike tightened. After a long while, the sand and dust in the air began to settle down, allowing a figure to slowly emerge. Only then did Zaisha notice it. The tip of her pike was piercing a crimson gauntlet. Boost! A voice sounded from the crimson gauntlet. Chapter 12:28. Boost! When such a voice sounded from the crimson gauntlet, a warning sign rose in Satya's heart. At Satya's level, intuition, which was similar to a sixth sense, was more trustworthy than what she saw with her eyes. Therefore, the moment an inexplicable warning rose in her heart, Satya did not think twice and directly raised the pike in her hand to block in front of her. The next moment, a bright vortex of air emerged from the fist wrapped in the crimson gauntlet. At the same time, the arm covered by the crimson gauntlet suddenly clenched into a fist and punched heavily at Satya in front of her. Wherever the fist passed, a sonic boom sounded in the space. The momentum was extremely terrifying. Such a punch directly cut through the space and fiercely landed on the pike that Satya had raised in time to block in front of her. Boom! A loud muffled sound that caused people's eardrums to sting and their heads to go blank resounded in the sky above the plains. The astonishing impact turned into a substantial force that surged on the ground like a tide. At the center of the astonishing force, Satya only felt an extremely terrifying force feedback from the pike in her hand, causing her hand holding the pike to go numb. She was sent flying by the unparalleled force. Goo! Satya inevitably let out a soft groan. It took her a lot of effort to adjust her body in the air and land on the ground. Even so, the tremendous force acting on Satya's body still caused the vampire's feet to rub against the ground, plowing 2 gullies in the ground. When she came to a stop, the soles of her feet in the gullies emitted a sizzling sound, and light smoke rose from them. Satya's steel-like feet helped her instead, preventing her from feeling the pain caused by the violent friction. But even so, Satya still raised her head with a solemn expression and looked ahead. There, the thick sand and dust that filled the space had been blown away by the impact of the shocking punch just now. Then, Noah's figure appeared in front of Satya without any injuries, just like before. His expression was calm from beginning to end. However, in the hands of the calm Noah, there was a crimson gauntlet that could not be ignored no matter what. It was a gauntlet that looked like a ferocious dragon claw. There was also a jade inlaid on the back of the gauntlet. Boost! The voice came from the Baoyu. As the voice sounded, Satya was also keenly aware of it. The aura on Noah's body suddenly doubled in strength. There was no doubt that it was the power brought by the gauntlet. Upon understanding this, Satya wasn't alarmed. Instead, she laughed. Just like before, she let out a melodious laughter that sounded like silver bells. As expected of Sir Noah, the supreme ruler of the underground tomb of Nasarick. Sure enough, an attack of that level couldn't do anything to you? Satya. Noah stared at the laughing Satya and narrowed his eyes slightly. I see. Although your mind is controlled, you haven't lost your rationality? What are you talking about? Sir Noah. Satya was like a noble princess. She held the spear in one hand and pressed the other to her chest as she spoke with her head raised and chest out. My condition is unprecedentedly good. It's so good that I can't help but want to suck all the blood from Sir Noah's body. After saying that, Satya stuck out her little pink tongue and licked her lips. She looked at Noah with a fervent gaze. If I can taste the blood of a supreme being, there's nothing more blissful than that. Is that so? Noah said indifferently. Then if I say that I don't mind letting you have a taste, will you obediently listen to me and stand there without moving? Although it's a very charming proposal, that won't do. Satya revealed a bloodthirsty smile. Since Sir Noah attacked me, then no matter what, I have to do my best to kill you. Why? Noah asked in return. Why do you have to do your best to kill me when I attack you? Am I not the master you should be loyal to even if you have to give up your life? Why? The smile on Satya's face froze slightly, and she frowned as though she was confused by her own thoughts. That's right. Why would I fight Sir Noah? Shouldn't Sir Noah be the master I should be loyal to even if I have to give up my life? Why would I do something so disrespectful? After being confused for a while, Satya suddenly smiled. Although I don't know why, since it's already started, there's no reason not to continue, right? You're right, Noah said self-deprecatingly. Since it's already started, there's no reason not to continue. Ahahaha. Satya laughed joyfully. That's right. That's it. The instant she said that, a shocking bloody light suddenly erupted from Satya's body. Within the bloody light, Satya's figure slowly changed. No, it should be said that Satya's clothes slowly changed. The original red and black princess dress suddenly disappeared. It was replaced by a set of armor. It was a set of dark red full-body armor that seemed to be dyed in blood and gave off a bone-chilling feeling. The full-body armor tightly wrapped around Satya's body without any gaps. There was only a hole on her face, exposing her face to the air. It looked like a helmet. The helmet was like a swan's head, with bird-like feathers protruding from the left and right sides. There were also winged ornaments hanging from the chest to the shoulders. The lower half of the body was a bright red battle skirt. It wasn't just a piece of equipment, but a set of defensive equipment made up of many pieces of equipment. Moreover, every piece of that set of defensive equipment was at the legendary grade. When combined, they could display power close to the divine artifact level. Now that she was fully geared in legendary equipment, she looked like a bona fide Valkyrie. Her originally noble image had transformed into an extremely dignified one. Those who knew Xiataya would definitely understand. With this set of defensive equipment, the guardian with the strongest one-on-one combat ability in Nazarik's underground tomb would truly display her strength. There was no other reason. The structure of Satya's professions was almost all about strengthening combat ability. Among these professions, there was a profession that specialized in combat ability Valkyrie. Satya, who had entered a complete combat state, was now about to display the power of this profession. In that case, the preparations are complete. Opening her eyes, Satya held the pike tightly and grinned at Noah. Then I'm going. With that, Satya stomped her feet on the ground, and her figure almost turned into a black line as she charged at Noah. Looking at the scene of Satya rushing at him with a bloodthirsty smile, Noah slowly clenched the red gauntlet covering his arm. The next moment, the pike that Satya had thrust out carried a fierce wind and an ear-piercing sound as it stabbed at Noah's head. Just like before, Xiataya had no intention of showing mercy at all. Thus, Noah clenched his fist tightly, allowing the vigorous power to condense on the gauntlet. Boost! The familiar voice sounded again. Noah's aura suddenly doubled. Immediately, Noah took a step forward. His ferocious gauntlets carried a vigorous force as they heavily smashed towards the long spear that was thrusting towards him. Clang! The collision between the spear and the gauntlet gave rise to a crisp sound of metal clashing. The sharp tip of the spear collided with the ferocious fist, causing an extremely violent ripple of energy to burst out from the point of collision between the sharp tip of the spear and the ferocious gauntlet. Gotcha! Suddenly, a crack appeared on the ground beneath Noah and Satya's feet. Chapter 1229. Without using the Demon Slayer and the Gate of Babylon, Noah could match the level 100 Zaisha with his own strength alone. However, that was under the condition that Zaisha did not use any equipment. Now, Zaisha had equipped the Dropper Pike, a divine artifact, and was even wearing legendary equipment. Some of the equipment from Yggdrasil were magical equipment that could display unusual effects and functions, while others did not have such effects. Zaisha's Dropper Pike belonged to the former, while the crimson armor on her body belonged to the latter. However, the equipment from the game had a very common characteristic. That was, it could increase the attributes of the equipment user. In view of this, the strength of the fully armed Zaisha suddenly soared. Clang! Amidst the bell-like sound of metal colliding, the impact of the violent collision not only caused a crack to burst open on the ground, but it also forced both Noah and Zaisha back. However, Zaisha was forced back several steps. On the other hand, Noah only took half a step back before stabilizing his body. Although Zaisha's strength had soared after being fully armed, Noah's strength had also soared by several times under the effect of the boosted gear. In the end, Noah still had the upper hand. It's not over yet. Zaisha suddenly stepped forward while retreating, and her body once again shot out like a sharp arrow. She swung the huge pike in her hand, and with a burst of extremely oppressive wind, she repeatedly stabbed at Noah's body. His field of vision was covered by dazzling spear shadows. Noah's eyes hardened as he withdrew his feet. While he was still retreating in midair, his arm, which was covered by the ferocious crimson hand armor, was waved and violently deflected the many spear shadows that were thrusting towards him. Clang, 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 clang. On the vast plain, the crisp sound of metal clashing echoed in the air, lingering for a long time. What's wrong with you, Lord Noah? Why aren't you fighting back? Ahahaha. Shadia, who was in a position where she was constantly attacking, repeatedly thrust the Dropper Pike in her hand in a violent manner while staring at Noah, who had a calm expression on his face as he deflected the incoming attacks one by one. She laughed provocatively. What about the overwhelming power you displayed when you faced all of us guardians alone in the throne room? Could it all be fake? Noah ignored Satya's provocation and only flicked away the spear that was thrusting at him. His expression didn't even change. Looking at the calm Noah, Xiataya became impatient. If that's the case, then let me kill you. After saying that, Zaisha suddenly stopped and extended her hand towards Noah. Wang! Amidst the trembling of space, three ring-shaped magic arrays suddenly overlapped and revolved in front of Xiataya's palm. Magic Enhancement Crimson Nova. A circle of crimson flames rose from the center of the magic array. The crimson flames began to expand like ripples. Then in the space around Noah, who was retreating, the same flame suddenly appeared. It instantly enveloped Noah's entire body and exploded. Bang! Amidst the explosion, Noah's entire body was engulfed in raging flames, and he was roasted by the scorching flames. However, Xiataya's eyes suddenly widened. There was no other reason. It was because in the flames whose temperature was comparable to the magma of an erupting volcano, Noah seemed to be unaffected. His body carried traces of heat from the flames as he slowly raised his foot and stomped down. With a bang, Noah's figure shot out of the scorching flames and approached Xiataya in a breath. Xiataya's expression changed and her pupils shrank. She didn't have time to consider why her magic was ineffective against Noah. She hurriedly raised the pipette pike and fiercely swung it at the figure shooting over. Noah, who had turned into a lightning-like black shadow, seemed to have sensed the ferocious energy coming toward him. His body instantly moved horizontally, and with a spin, he appeared behind Xiataya as if he was performing an elegant dance. In the next second, Noah's body spun slightly, and he clenched his fists that were covered in crimson gloves. The powerful force caused a gust of wind to swirl around, and as Noah's fist swung out, it formed a sonic boom that blasted towards Aisha's back. Sensing the terrifying energy coming from behind, Xiataya's expression changed again and again as she screamed, "Impure impact shield!" Blood-like crimson energy ripples suddenly spread out from Xiataya's body and turned into a barrier that protected Xiataya inside. Bang! With a muffled boom, Noah's terrifying punch smashed into the energy barrier. The resulting shockwave turned into waves of wind that spread out in all directions. Immediately after, a cracking sound rang out from the energy barrier. It was the sound of the energy barrier protecting Xiataya inside cracking. What? Xiataya was shocked. My impure impact shield actually cracked? On the other side, Noah's brows furrowed slightly. It didn't shatter? Muttering those words, Noah's figure once again spun around. Relying on his LV.4 and SSS rank agility and dexterity, he was like a phantom that constantly flashed around Shadya's body. While he was dodging, Noah's fists, which contained a terrifying strength chi, continuously blasted out, one after another, hitting the impure impact shield that protected Xiataya. Under Noah's almost non-stop attack, a series of muffled bang 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 sounds continuously shook the energy barrier around Xiataya without any interruption. Every time a muffled sound shook, the energy barrier around Xiataya would crack with a crack sound. Under such circumstances, Xiataya really didn't dare to believe it. If she was directly hit by such a punch, even if she was wearing legendary grade equipment, she would definitely be injured. After all, Xiataya's impure impact shield was not a magic spell, but a special skill. This special skill could be used for both defense and attack. When used for defense, its defensive power was enough to surpass level 10 magic. When used for attack, its offensive power was enough to surpass Xiataya's pipette pike. Such a powerful special skill could only be used twice a day by Xiataya. Such a barrier actually cracked under Noah's punch. One could imagine how terrifying Noah's punch was. It must be the power of the Crimson Gauntlet. Otherwise, even Lord Noah wouldn't be able to crack the impure impact shield with an ordinary attack. Could it be a world-class item? Xiataya's guess was only half correct. Noah's ordinary punch could have such power because of the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear, which increased his strength 3 times. With LV.4 and an SSS level blessing in all aspects, Noah's physical ability had been multiplied 3 times. One could imagine how terrifying it was. However, Noah's Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear was not a world-class item, but a weapon imitated by weapon refinement. Boost! Suddenly, Noah's gauntlet made a sound again. The 4th multiplier ability was activated. Noah stomped on the ground and charged straight at Zaisha. His body spun and he leaped into the air. Only then did Noah's aura suddenly soar by 2-fold. Immediately after, under Xiataya's narrowed pupils, the fist covered by the crimson gauntlet carried an incomparably fierce force, creating a sharp sonic boom as it smashed down on the energy barrier. Bang! A muffled sound that was louder than any of the previous sounds resounded in the sky. Chapter 1230. Bang! Amidst the deafening explosion, a violent shockwave erupted from the cracked energy barrier around Satya. The The shockwave swept away the dust on the ground, breaking it inch by inch. Bang! Without any suspense, Noah's punch, which had been amplified 4 times by the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear, caused the blood-like energy barrier to shatter like glass. It shattered into pieces and scattered in all directions. Then Noah's body turned, and his leg suddenly flew out, landing heavily on Zacia's body. Dong! The terrifying power sent Satya flying like a rubber ball. She rubbed against the air and heavily slammed into the ground in the distance. She smashed through the rock layer and stirred up a dense cloud of dust. The ground looked like it had been hit by a meteorite, and a crater appeared. Poochie! In the crater, Satya spat out a mouthful of blood. The crimson full-body armor on her body cracked open. Everyone suddenly fell silent. In front, Noah raised his eyes and looked at Satya, who was deep in the crater. He watched as blood seeped out of the corners of her mouth. His eyes flickered slightly as he sighed. "Give up, Satya. You're no match for me." Although Noah's words did not contain much confidence, it was precisely because they did not contain any emotion that they gave off the most realistic feeling. Cough, cough, cough. Satya covered her chest and coughed as she slowly stood up from the crater with difficulty. She looked at Noah and revealed a coquettish smile. "That's true. You're indeed worthy of being the supreme and invincible sovereign that I'm willing to sacrifice my life for. You're the supreme ruler of the underground tomb of Nasarick. With such power, you're the absolute overlord of this world. Provoking you is more foolish than provoking a dragon." While saying that, Satya did not have any intention of giving up. Instead, the bloodthirst on her face became even stronger. "Undoubtedly, I know this clearly. Why do I feel that I can't give up the battle with you? Why do I feel that I have to kill you? I really don't understand. Is that so?" Noah closed his eyes. "In other words, you don't intend to surrender?" "Of course." Satya pointed the pike in her hand at Noah and laughed coquettishly. "I've been looking forward to Sir Noah being able to love me. I finally got this opportunity, so how can I give it up?" Hearing that, Noah was silent for a while. After a while, he opened his eyes and looked at Satya with determination. "If that's the case, then let me pull down the curtain of this boring battle." After saying that, Noah raised the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear. Boost, multiplication. The voice that represented the activation of the 5th multiplication ability echoed from the jade of the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear. The limit of the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear, which was created by Noah's weapon refinement, was 5 boosts. Therefore, from the beginning of the battle until now 50 seconds had passed, and the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear was finally able to display its greatest power. The reason why Noah had not used the Demon Slayer and the Gate of Babylon was because he was waiting for this moment. Thus, Noah chanted a contract in the Elven language. "Cold Queen of Steel, the holy sword that slays demons." Noah pulled out the silver dagger from his back and placed it in his right hand equipped with the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear. "Turn into a sword of steel and bestow me with divine power." A dazzling white light burst out from the silver dagger. Amidst the light, the highest grade elven equipment named Demon Slayer appeared in its complete form. It turned into a shining silver holy sword and was held tightly by a ferocious red dragon-shaped gauntlet. "That's..." Zacia's pupils shrank. "Aster." Zacia was not familiar with the elven girl named Aster, but she was not a stranger either. She was not familiar with Aster because ever since she flew out of Noah's bed in the form of a sword and fought with the Guardians, Zacia had never seen Aster again. She was not unfamiliar because of jealousy. She was jealous that Aster could become Noah's weapon. Not only Zacia, but even Yairbead was extremely jealous of Aster. For Yairbead and Zacia, who had special feelings for Noah, just the title of becoming Noah's weapon was enough to arouse their jealousy. Not to mention because Aster was a weapon, she was carried by Noah at all times. They even slept together, which made Yairbead and Zacia jealous for a while. If they could be like Aster and transform into a weapon and be used by Lord Noah, it would be too fortunate. This was the truest thought of Yairbead and Zacia after knowing of Aster's existence. Therefore, although Zacia had only seen Aster once, she had never forgotten the existence of this elven girl. Of course, there was another reason why she had such a deep impression. That was, back then, Aster had fought with all the guardians in the form of a sword and was not at a disadvantage. At that time, all the guardians were not wearing any equipment, and because the battlefield was in Noah's room, they did not even use their true strength. However, being able to fight against 6 guardians was enough to prove Aster's strength. She was definitely not weaker than a world-class weapon. This fact made Zaisha extremely vigilant. Unfortunately, Noah had been holding back and not using the Demon Slayer. Not only because he wanted to let it display the power of a world-class weapon. Transfer. Following this voice, the power of the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear, which had been multiplied 5 times, was all transferred to the Demon Slayer. Immediately, the holy sword that had annihilated the Demon King trembled and released an astonishing light. That light illuminated the entire world. At this moment, the power of the strongest sword Elven had multiplied 5 times, increasing to an unprecedented level. With this level of power, even the mind control of a world-class item can be removed in an instant. As soon as his voice fell, Noah, who was holding the Demon Slayer that was emitting an unprecedentedly strong light, leaned forward, shook, and turned into a black shadow that shot toward Zaisha. That speed was simply like a bolt of lightning. The terrifying speed shocked Zaisha again and again, and she could not hide her shock as she shouted, "Impure Impact Shield!" A blood-red energy barrier shook out from Zaisha's body and covered her. Absolute Sword Skill Initial Form Purple Lightning. The lightning-like thrust landed on the energy barrier. Bang! It couldn't even hold on for a second before the energy barrier suddenly exploded. Wah! Zaisha turned pale with fright. She hurriedly flapped the bat-like wings on her back and retreated. However, at this moment, golden ripples suddenly fluctuated in the space around Zaisha, and chains shot out. They stretched out and wrapped around Zaisha's limbs, forcibly restraining her body. This time, Zaisha did not even have time to react. Pucci! The white-eyed holy sword that was shining with an unprecedentedly strong and dazzling light pierced through Zaisha's chest. Rich white light enveloped Zaisha's body. Ah! Zaisha's sorrowful cry resounded through the sky. Chapter 1231. Ah! Shadia, who was clad in a crimson armor, was enveloped by the dazzling white radiance of the Demon Slayer. She wailed in agony as though she had been struck by lightning. She looked as though she had also been purified by the Demon Slayer. Wisps of black aura emanated from her body. Noah, who was holding the Demon Slayer tightly, maintained the posture of piercing through Satya's chest with the elven device in his hand. He looked up at Satya, who was crying out in pain in the white light as though she had been struck by lightning. He gritted his teeth, and the divine power in his body intensified as he poured it into the silver holy sword in his hand. Clang! After the Demon Slayer was strengthened by the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear 5 times in a row, in addition to the massive amount of divine power, the white radiance emanating from it was so dazzling that it burned one's eyes. Under this situation, Shadia, who was enveloped by the dazzling white radiance of the Demon Slayer, as though she had been struck by lightning, released wisps of black aura from her body, and her wails became even more intense. From a distance, it was as though a white sun had appeared on the vast plain, dazzling and resplendent. The dazzling white radiance gushed out like a tide and enveloped the entire space. At that moment, the monsters that were lying in ambush in the plain and sealed off Shadia's surroundings in accordance with Noah's orders were drowned by the dazzling white radiance. These demonic creatures also involuntarily appeared from the darkness and let out beast-like cries. There was nothing they could do about it. After all, the Demon Slayer had a curse resistance that could break all curses. It was simply the natural enemy of these monsters who had negative energy that was completely opposite to their life force. Even Demon King Solomon, who had inherited the power of the Dark Elf King, and was devoured by the power of the Dark Elf King, couldn't resist the power of the Demon Slayer, let alone these monsters. What's more, the power of the Demon Slayer had increased 5-fold from the beginning to the end. Fortunately, at that moment, the power of the Demon Slayer wasn't directed at these monsters in the underground tomb of Nazareth. Otherwise, all the monsters here, including the few level 85 monsters, would have been cleansed by the power of the Demon Slayer, leaving nothing behind. As a result, amidst all kinds of bestial roars, the dazzling white radiance that enveloped the entire space finally stopped expanding. After an unknown amount of time, the white radiance that enveloped the entire vast plain gradually dimmed. Immediately, the monsters whose negative energy was surging due to the power of the demon slayer looked at the center of the dim white radiance with lingering fear. There, Noah, who was holding the demon slayer, was still in the posture of piercing the silver holy sword into Satya's body. His head was lowered, and the bangs on his forehead covered his expression. On the other hand, Zaisha also lowered her head and returned to her marionette-like state. With a trembling sound, the huge thorny spear in Satya's hand and the crimson full-body armor on her body seemed to have turned into a mirage and disappeared in a flash. Bang! On Noah's right hand that was holding the demon slayer, the Longinus, which was called the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear, also shattered into pieces like glass and disappeared with a shattering sound. Ugh! Satya let out a muffled groan. Her delicate body softened, and she slowly fell down. It was not until this moment that Noah finally made a move. After pulling the demon slayer out of Satya's body, Noah hugged Satya, who had collapsed on him, and knelt on one knee on the ground. Everyone suddenly fell silent. Ugh! After an unknown period of time, Satya let out a groan and slowly opened her scarlet eyes. Noah, who was holding Satya in his arms, immediately looked into her eyes. At this moment, there was no longer the emptiness in her eyes, nor was there the madness from before. There was only endless exhaustion. Satya also opened her eyes and met Noah's gaze. She was stunned on the spot. Noah? Upon hearing the familiar voice, Noah secretly heaved a sigh of relief and asked, "What's the matter? How do you feel?" "How do I feel?" Satya seemed to be a little confused for a moment, and she seemed to be unable to grasp the situation. She just opened her tired eyes and spoke weakly. "I feel so tired. For an undying, this was absolutely an incredible thing. Because the undying didn't feel fatigue and didn't need to eat or drink. As the true ancestor of vampires, who was at the top of the undying, it was really inconceivable that Satya would feel tired. Of course, if it was mental fatigue, it would be a different story. However, looking at Satya's powerless appearance, it was clear that this vampire girl wasn't just mentally exhausted. She was definitely physically exhausted as well. However, this was not strange at all. As an undying, Satya's body was also full of negative energy, which was the opposite of life force. Under the direct attack of the demon slayer, the negative energy in Satya's body was purified to the extreme, which caused Satya to feel extremely tired like ordinary people. However, Satya's mental control was also lifted. Therefore, Satya looked at Noah blankly. "Why am I here? Why is Sir Noah here?" "You don't need to think about anything. Have a good rest first." Noah stroked Satya's silver-gray hair. "When you wake up, you'll understand everything." If it were in the past, as the guardian of Nazarik's underground tomb, Zaisha wouldn't have fallen asleep in front of the person she had given everything she had to serve. However, the accumulated fatigue in Satya's body seemed to be quite strong, so the vampire girl nodded weakly, closed her beautiful eyes and slowly fell asleep. Looking at Satya, who had fallen asleep in his arms, Noah carried her in a princess carry. "Let's go back, Satya." The noble little princess-like girl did not respond to Noah's words. She just laid in Noah's arms with a serene expression. In the underground tomb of Nasarik, a group of NPCs looked at the screen in the air and fell silent as they watched Noah carrying Satya in his arms. Dimugo sighed and said so. Sir Noah's overwhelming victory. That's right. Yul was also in a daze. Even Satya, who is the strongest in one-on-one combat among the Guardians, was not a match for Sir Noah even when she was fully armed. 50 seconds. Cosita spat out white gas. Sir Noah defeated Satya in such a short amount of time. Really? Marley was a little depressed. Too strong. The group of NPCs fell silent. Then Sebastian said, "That's right. Does such a powerful supreme really need the loyalty of lowly people like us?" This was the reason why the NPCs fell silent. I hope everyone will remember today's lesson. Yerbade looked at Noah on the screen and said in an unprecedentedly serious tone, "Next time, I won't allow you to be as useless as you were this time." The group of NPCs nodded resolutely. Chapter 1232. As mentioned earlier, the underground tomb of Nasarik was mainly divided into 10 floors, and all of them were located underground. On the ground, the underground tomb of Nassarik was an extremely vast graveyard. The graveyard was surrounded by a huge wall that was 6 meters thick. The wall was circular. There was an entrance at the front and back of the wall. Inside the wall, the huge graveyard seemed to have sunk into the earth, and it looked like a basin. In the graveyard, in addition to neatly trimmed weeds and many messy tombstones, there were also dense trees. The scene that seemed to form a forest complemented the surrounding neatly trimmed weeds and messy tombstones, creating a strong sense of contrast. Not only that, but there were also exquisite carvings of angels and goddesses everywhere in the graveyard. The carvings of angels and goddesses were extremely exquisite and breathtaking. Moreover, it could be seen at a glance that someone was carrying out regular maintenance. In contrast, the towering trees in the graveyard were crooked and drooped, brewing a gloomy atmosphere. Then, in the graveyard, there was an ancestral hall in each of the 4 corners of the graveyard. Surrounded by the 4 ancestral halls, there was an extremely large ancestral hall in the center of the graveyard. This large ancestral hall was the entrance to the underground tomb of Nassarik. Noah, who was carrying Satya, slowly descended from the air with the help of a magic tool with the power of flight, and landed in this strange graveyard. Whoosh! Almost immediately, monsters of different shapes and sizes flashed out from the shadows around the graveyard, their bodies surging with an evil aura. These monsters were at least level 50 and above. Therefore, once an outsider stepped into the graveyard, these monsters of at least level 50 and above would instantly appear and take down any outsider. However, when they saw the full appearance of the newcomer, the demonic creatures that were surging with evil aura all paused for a moment. Then they knelt or prostrated themselves in unison, offering Noah their vassal. Noah ignored the monsters around him. He only carried the sleeping Satya and walked towards the central ancestral hall. When Noah walked out of sight, the monsters of at least level 50 and above seemed to have merged into the surrounding shadows and disappeared, continuing to guard the entrance to the underground tomb of Nassarik. Not long after, Noah, who was carrying Satya, stepped onto the steps of the ancestral hall. Lord Noah. At the entrance of the ancestral hall, Yacht, Mare, Cassette, Dimugos, Sebastian, and a group of combat maids were all present. They bowed in the direction of Noah. Welcome back. Noah nodded casually and then looked at Ubeda. Although judging from the situation, Satya should be fine, let me confirm it for the time being. Yes, Lord Noah. Yacht reported as he stepped forward and lowered his head. I have just confirmed the list of NPCs in the throne room's management system. Satya's name has indeed returned to its original white color. It is no longer red-black, which was hostile when she was in the state of mind. Based on this, Satya's problem should be resolved. That's good. Noah's expression softened slightly. That is true, but it is also true that Satya was hostile to the Supreme One. Yerbade looked at Noah, and his eyes, which were glowing with golden light, flickered slightly. Lord Noah, shouldn't we punish Satya? Noah furrowed his brows when he heard Yeerbade's words. He raised his head and looked at the NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nassarik. Only then did Noah notice that these NPCs who were loyal to him seemed to have changed. The change here wasn't in their appearance but in their atmosphere. In the past, when these NPCs faced Noah, they would have an atmosphere of respect and worship. Now, not only did the reverence and worship become even more intense, there was also a trace of a different feeling mixed in. It was a feeling that came after they gained tenacious determination and strong willpower. It seemed that during the battle between Noah and Satya, these NPCs in the underground tomb of Nassarik had gained some benefits. Please forgive me for interfering with Lord Noah's decision. Under Noah's gaze, Yacht said so. For a force, the distinction between reward and punishment is the most important issue. It is also common sense in the world. Even if Satya was disrespectful to Lord Noah involuntarily, a mistake is a mistake. If there is no punishment, the subordinates won't take it as a warning. Who knows, when the same thing happens again, the others will use this as an excuse to weaken their willpower. The success rate of mind domination was also related to the strength of an individual's willpower. If one's willpower was strong, then even if they were under mind domination, they would be able to resist it. Take Satya for example. Even when her mind was under control, she could still rely on her tenacious willpower to resist and counterattack the caster. This resulted in the enemy being unable to give orders to Satya, and could only make the helpless decision of abandoning her. Knowing that they will be punished for making such a mistake, even if they are under mind domination, in order to not be punished, everyone will resist so that the situation won't become too unfavorable. Demiurgos continued Yacht's words. As such, this subordinate also believes that Lord Noah should give Satya an appropriate punishment as a warning. It's not just this incident, Seabass said in a deep voice. In the future, no matter what happens that will implicate the Supreme Sovereign, we hope that Lord Noah can give us the harshest punishment. Immediately, Yacht, Mare, Cositas, and the other NPCs in the underground tomb of Nassarik all nodded. Hearing this, Noah finally understood. Yacht and the others suggested that Noah punish Satya not only because of the so-called fair rewards and punishments, but also because they wanted to express their determination. They were determined not to cause trouble for Noah and drag him down. Moreover, if I am under mind domination and betray Lord Noah, then even if Lord Noah forgives me, I won't forgive myself. Yacht revealed a sincere and gentle smile. I'm sure Satya will feel the same way, right? If it is someone who is loyal to Lord Noah, then under such circumstances, there is no one who would not feel guilty, Demiurgos said. This subordinate believes that if Lord Noah punishes Satya, then the guilt in her heart will disappear. On the contrary, if Lord Noah doesn't punish Satya, then the guilt in her heart will definitely haunt her, right? This was indeed true. After all, punishment also meant forgiveness. No matter what mistakes one made, after being punished it was as good as written off. In this place, even if it was for Satya's sake, Chun Zhao had to follow Yacht and the other's suggestions. Even though he knew this, Noah's frown deepened. The reason was simple. Noah was partly responsible for Satya's mind domination. Punish Satya? If that was the case, what would Noah do about the guilt in his heart? Noah, who felt a headache coming on, could only sigh and look at Yacht. Let me think about it first. In any case, Satya hasn't woken up yet. When she wakes up, tell her to come find me. Understood. Yacht and the others immediately lowered their heads. Seeing this, Noah walked past Yair Bedard and the others and walked into the large underground tomb in Nassarik. The NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nassarik hurriedly followed. At this moment, Noah suddenly spoke. Demiurgos, think of a way to find out the location of the capital of the Celian cult. Yes. Demiurgos was startled at first, but he quickly responded after reacting. May I know what Lord Noah plans to do? Isn't that obvious? Noah continued to walk forward without looking back. As he walked, he spoke faintly. You came to my territory to do as you please. Out of etiquette, I should also pay you a visit. Chapter 1233. On the day that the battle between Noah and Zaisha ended, a small change was also taking place in Ylantir. Recalling the huge commotion that he had heard when he sneaked into Ylantir, a person wearing a black robe whose figure seemed to have blended into the moonlight slightly lifted his face that was covered by the hood of the black robe. He opened his mouth and revealed a crazy and sinister smile. Seems like that side is more interesting. These words rang out softly from under the hoodie. From the voice, it was easy to recognize that the other party was a woman. The woman in the black robe was immersed in her own world. No one knew what she thought of, but she kept laughing creepily as she walked forward. Upon closer inspection, the place where the black-robed person was actually a huge cemetery. This graveyard belonged to Ylantir. Moreover, it was a huge cemetery with an outer city wall that occupied almost half of the western area of Ylantir. Presumably, even compared to the other countries, the scale of this cemetery was very large, right? This was a scale that appeared to suppress the birth of the undead. The undead were a race that was born from death. Therefore, as long as there was a place where the living were dying, it was possible for the undead to be born. According to research, people had discovered that the probability of the dead who died an unnatural death or had no one to mourn was quite high. Therefore, in places like battlefields and ruins, the undead would often appear. Ylantir's location bordered the borders of the kingdom, empire, and theocracy. Not to mention the theocracy for the time being, because the kingdom and empire were at war all year round. This city that bordered the borders of the two countries was extremely special. For example, the battlefield where the kingdom and empire fought was very close to Ylantir. The soldiers who died on the battlefield, regardless of the number or cause of death, were enough to give birth to a large number of undead. In view of this, in order to prevent the dead from becoming undead, a cemetery that people could mourn became rather important. This was the reason why Yilantilai's cemetery was built so large. Of course, even if this was the case, undying beings would often be born here. It was one of the places that no one was willing to visit. Under such circumstances, the black-robed man walked unscrupulously in the cemetery. Soon, he arrived in front of an ancestral hall and removed the hood on his head. What appeared under the hood was the pretty face of a young girl in her prime. The girl's facial features were regular, and her appearance could be considered cute. However, on that cute face hung a dangerous smile like that of a carnivorous beast. With such a smile, the girl pushed open the stone door of the ancestral hall with light steps. She entered the ancestral hall and came to the stone pedestal where the corpse was placed. The young girl walked up to the stone pedestal and pressed down on a small, inconspicuous carving at the bottom of the stone pedestal with a relaxed movement that didn't make one think that she would appear in a graveyard or an ancestral hall. Gotcha! The sculpture sank as the girl moved. Immediately afterward, the stone seat trembled and slowly opened like a door, revealing a flight of stairs leading to the underground in front of the young girl. Hee. The girl giggled as if she found it interesting. Moreover, she didn't hesitate to walk down the gloomy underground stairs that would make ordinary girls shrink back. She arrived at an extremely vast empty space. The walls and floor were made of artificially treated earth. It was unknown if there was wind, but the air was quite fresh. However, inside the empty space, there was a strange carpet hanging on the wall. Moreover, there was a candlestick that seemed to be dyed red with blood. The candles inside were lit and emitted a faint flame. The swaying candlelight made the girl's shadow stretch on the walls and floor. The girl walked with clear steps and arrived at the bottom of the empty space. Looking around, the girl's gaze stopped at a place after a while. Her giggling voice echoed in the surroundings without any concealment. Tisk! The girl's unpleasant giggling attracted a speechless sound that contained displeasure. That was the sound of someone being easily discovered. Moreover, it was the sound of someone being easily discovered by someone they hated. Under such a speechless sound, a thin man slowly walked out from the shadows where the girl was looking. It was a man with sunken eyes and no hair. It was impossible to determine his age. He wore a long robe and wore a necklace made of small animal skulls around his neck. His body was so thin that only skin and bones were left. He also held a black staff. Rather than calling him a human, it would be better to call him a skinny skeleton. Hi. The girl warmly greeted the skeleton man. I'm here to see you, little Kaji. My name is Kadget, not little Kaji. The skeleton man who called himself Kadget said with an unpleasant voice. Cillian Theocracy's Special Intelligence Unit. Dark Scriptures Clementine. What are you doing here? I'm no longer a member of the Dark Scripture. The girl named Clementine said with a frivolous tone. I'm here to tell you a piece of good news, little Kaji. A piece of good news that will be of great help to your goal. Hearing this, Kadget narrowed his eyes. Kadget was a magic chanter that specialized in the study of the undead. That was why Kadget stayed in this kind of place. Of course, the reason why Kadget stayed here wasn't as simple as just researching the undying. He wanted to create an undying that wouldn't tire, didn't need to eat or drink, and had an immortal life. Usually, in places where the undead gathered, there would be powerful undead. If there were powerful undead gathered, then there would be even more powerful undead. Using this characteristic in theory, as long as there were enough undead, then in the end, there would definitely be a terrifying undead king that was strong enough to make all the races in the world despair. Kadget's goal was to turn Yilantir into a ghost town. By collecting the negative energy in the ghost town, he could create a large number of undead, and even make himself an undead existence. The girl named Clementine clearly knew Kadget's goal. That was why she said that. Did you know? Clementine giggled. It's said that recently, the Adventurers Guild discovered a super, powerful undying being and sent out 3 teams of secret silver-ranked adventurers as leaders. A total of more than 200 Adventurers Guild members went on a crusade against the undying being. In the end, those people ran back scared witless today, causing Yilantir to almost fall into chaos. Hearing this, Kadget's eyes flashed as he stared closely at Clementine. Is what you said true? It's true, it's true. Of course it's true. Clementine said with a tone that made people feel like she was joking. Also, it said that the super powerful undead seems to be a servant that someone summoned with summoning magic. Oh, Kadjit asked with interest. Then what rank of undead summoning magic did that person use? 3rd rank? Or 4th rank? Little Kadjit, you've become stupid. The smile on Clementine's face gradually became uninteresting as she said exaggeratedly. That's a magic chanter that could force back more than 200 adventurers led by 3 teams of mithril rank adventurers. Just a servant alone made the Adventurers Guild feel like they're facing a great enemy. It even turned the leader of one of the mithril rank adventurers into a steel statue in an instant. How could it only be a 3rd or 4th rank trash? The corners of Kadjit's eyes twitched slightly. There was no other reason. The highest rank of undead summoning magic that Kadjit used was only a 3rd rank magic. Hey little Kadjit, don't you want to meet that person? Clementine invited as if she had good intentions. Perhaps you can obtain the secret to summoning such a powerful undead from him. It's very likely that he's like you, only able to use low-rank summoning magic, but can use precious magical tools to increase the power of his summoning magic. Perhaps that's how he can summon such a powerful undead? What she meant was for Kadjit to snatch it from him. Is that so? Kadjit rolled his eyes and sneered at Clementine. But what's in it for you? Do you even need to ask? Clementine smiled cheerfully. Of course it's interesting. Chapter 1234. If someone thought that the underground tomb of Nasaric was gloomy because it was underground, then they were completely wrong. Indeed, in the great catacombs beneath Nasaric there were dark places. After all, the underground tomb of Nasaric was made up of 10 underground spaces. Among them, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd floors of the underground tomb of Nasaric were in the form of tombs. The 4th floor was an underground lake. The 5th floor was an ice river. The 6th floor was a jungle. The 7th floor was magma. The 8th floor was a wilderness. To say that the first 8 floors of the underground tomb of Nasaric were gloomy was to underestimate the stronghold of a powerful guild that could do anything in the game. However, this was only true for the first 8 floors of the underground tomb of Nasaric. The 9th floor of the Nasaric catacombs was as solemn and sacred as a chalk castle. Every room was a standard royal suite. It couldn't be any more luxurious. Compared to the first 8 floors, it was like a place of heaven. Naturally, such a place wouldn't be gloomy. The rainbow-colored crystal lamp hanging from the ceiling emitted light that was extremely gentle and beautiful. That was the light from a magic tool called perpetual light. Just like the name of the magic item, as long as there was enough magic, this light would never be extinguished. With such a magic item as a light source, even if the 9th floor of the underground tomb of Nasaric wanted to be gloomy, it wouldn't be gloomy. It was likely that anyone walking in the hallway would be moved by the beauty of this place. This was especially true for the people in the great underground tomb of Nasaric. There was no one who would not be moved when they walked on this floor that was originally occupied by the creators. Therefore, for the people in the underground tomb of Nasaric, who were willing to give up everything to be loyal to the Supreme Sovereign, all the scenes and decorations here were worth loving. Every time they walked on this floor, everyone in the underground tomb of Nasaric would feel happy and reaffirm their loyalty to the creators. If someone didn't like the scenery here, then they weren't loyal enough to the Supreme Sovereign, or they had disloyal thoughts. That was the unanimous thought of everyone in the great tomb under Nasaric. Even Xiaotaya thought the same. However, this time Zaisha did not feel happy at all. Instead, she felt unusually heavy. It wasn't just her mood. Even her footsteps were unbelievably heavy. Her beautiful face was filled with gloom. There was even a faint trace of despair on her face. What should I do? When Xiaotaya woke up from her dream and recalled everything that had happened, she almost fainted. This was because Xiaotaya remembered the person she was loyal to even if it cost her life. She swung her weapon. Why is it like this? Xiaotaya covered her face and was on the verge of crying. That must be a dream, right? After waking up from her sleep, Xiaotaya had told herself this more than once. There was no other way. Even Zatia herself did not want to believe that she had actually pointed her gun at the person she needed to be loyal to. That was tantamount to betrayal. No, in fact, that was betrayal. Even though Xiaotaya was under mental control at that time, it was just like what Yair said. A mistake was a mistake and a betrayal was a betrayal. Even if she had no choice, it was the truth. Xiataya could not forgive herself for that. It wasn't just because Noah was the person Satya had to pledge her loyalty to, it was also because Noah was the person Satya loved. Of course, there was something wrong with this love. In the game era, Xiataya's creator had set her up as a person with all kinds of inexplicable hobbies. Bisexual, sadist, masochist, necrophilia. All kinds of special fetishes that ordinary people wouldn't dare to compliment were gathered in Xiataya's body. When they first met, Noah used overwhelming strength to send all the guardians flying. When he used this as a test, it accidentally aroused the masochistic part of the vampire girl's heart. Since then, Xiataya had fallen madly in love with Noah. In this way, who could say that this kind of love was right? But there was no doubt that Xiataya did have special feelings for Noah, waving her gun at the person she needed to be loyal to even if she had to die, becoming an enemy of the person she loved the most. Under the double blow, the guilt in Xiataya's heart was even stronger than Yerbade and Demiurgos had imagined. Boo-hoo! Xiataya covered her face, and her voice sounded like she was about to cry. How good would it be if I could atone for my sins with death? For the NPCs in the underground tomb of Nasaric, death was definitely the easiest way to atone for their sins. This was because they had long decided to dedicate their lives to the supreme ruler of the underground tomb of Nasaric. If possible, Xiataya really wanted to commit suicide now and end everything. However, Noah had ordered Xiataya to see him immediately after she woke up. Between death and orders, Xiataya chose the latter without hesitation. It was not that Xiataya was afraid of death. Instead, compared to death, Noah's orders were truly important. If she died under Noah's orders, she would be disobeying Noah's orders. Xiataya had already betrayed Noah once, so how could she disobey Noah's orders again? Therefore, no matter how heavy her footsteps were, Xiataya could only choose to continue. In fact, to Xiataya, it didn't matter if she was reprimanded by Noah. Taking her life or committing suicide to atone for her sins wasn't a problem at all. What Xiataya was truly afraid of was seeing Noah's disappointed expression. What should she do if she was abandoned by the supreme ruler she had to be loyal to even if she had to give up her life? How terrifying would it be if she disappointed her master? If Noah no longer trusted Xiataya because of this, it would definitely be countless times more painful than death for her. If that happens, I won't be forgiven even if I lose my life. Xiataya couldn't help but mutter under her depression. If Lord Noah is disappointed in Nasaric because of this and leaves this place. Before she could finish her sentence, Xiataya's delicate body trembled violently as if she couldn't imagine such an outcome. She shook her head desperately. No, that can't be. That can't happen. Lord Noah is the most benevolent supreme ruler in this world. A benevolent king who can even save inferior creatures like humans. He definitely won't abandon us. It was as if Xiataya had deliberately said these words to convince herself. However, this sentence made the uneasiness in Xiataya's heart even more intense, making her footsteps even heavier. She walked forward with an ashen expression. As time passed, no matter how heavy Xiataya's footsteps were, she still arrived at the door of Noah's room. To Xiataya's surprise, there were two figures in front of the door. Yerbade and Demiurgos. As if noticing Xiataya's arrival, Yerbade and Demiurgos focused their gazes on her at the same time. At that moment, Xiataya didn't know if it was an illusion, but she felt that Yerbade and Demiurgos' gazes were full of blame. This made Xiataya, who was already very uneasy, panic. Why are you here? Yerbade and Demiurgos fell silent at the same time. Then Demiurgos spoke up. We came to report to Lord Noah because the results of the research on the maintenance costs of the underground tomb in Nasaric have come out. The maintenance costs of the underground tomb in Nasaric used to be the gold coins in Yggdrasil. Now there was no longer a channel to obtain the gold coins in Yggdrasil. The underground tomb in Nasaric had to confirm whether the money in this world could be used for maintenance costs. This result was enough to affect the future development of the underground tomb in Nasaric. Compared to Yerbade and Demiurgos, who were running around for this important matter, Xiataya, who had been controlled by the enemy and brought trouble to Noah, was simply too incompetent. Xiataya lowered her head guiltily. At that moment, Yerbade spoke. Since you're here, let's go in together. Xiataya could only nod. Chapter 1235. Kacha. With the sound of the door opening, Yerbade, Demugos, and the restless Satya entered Noah's room together. The luxurious suite was presented in front of the three guardians of Nazarik's underground tomb, causing a trace of solemnity to rise in the hearts of the three guardians. Coming to the residence of the supreme ruler of Nazarik's underground tomb, no NPC would not feel solemn. Even Satya, who was feeling extremely uneasy, was the same. Even Demugos subconsciously lowered his voice. It seems that Lord Noah is still resting for the time being. In the underground tomb of Nasarik, all the creatures were of the xenomorph type. These xenomorph creatures almost never tired, didn't need to eat, and didn't need to rest or sleep at all. Therefore, xenomorph creatures were very troublesome to deal with for humans. For example, if humans and the undead were to go to war, then the undead's advantage would be simply unimaginable. Can you imagine when you are exhausted from fighting on the battlefield, the lowest level skeleton is still waving its sword vigorously from start to finish? Can you imagine when you haven't slept for 3 days and 3 nights, when you're really sleepy, the lowest level skeleton is still charging? Can you imagine when your body urgently needs to replenish its food and recover its physical strength, the scene of the lowest level skeleton still relentlessly launching attacks? For humans, fatigue, sleep, and food were indispensable. However, the lowly undead didn't have such problems. Therefore, if humans and the undead were to go to war, the undead army could continuously fight a war of attrition. As long as they fought for 7 days and 7 nights without stopping, then no matter how large the human army was, it would be finished. Moreover, the human army needed food, but the undead army didn't. They could wait until the human army ran out of food, then the humans would be finished. In view of this, in the eyes of the undead, and even in the eyes of other races, humans who had no special abilities, were born with extremely low physical conditions, and had all kinds of needs, were inferior creatures. Because the human race was too troublesome and too fragile, wasn't it? That's what everyone in the great tombs of Nasarik was thinking. Only Noah was an exception. To be more precise, in the eyes of everyone in the underground tomb of Nasarik, humans were reduced to inferior existences because of the need to rest. But when it came to Noah, they were instantly glorified. Yerbade clenched his hands tightly in front of him as if his heart was aching. He's actually still resting now. This must be the result of Lord Noah working so hard for the matter of Nasarik, right? We, the benevolent and merciful supreme beings, have worked too hard. Demugos lowered his head guiltily. If we could be more useful and help share Lord Noah's burden, Lord Noah wouldn't have to work. Satya didn't say anything, but her heart ached for Noah. The heavens took pity on him. Noah was just resting normally. If Noah were to know that the fact that he fell asleep on the bed was seen by the guardians as the result of working hard, he would definitely be embarrassed, right? Then should we wake Lord Noah up? Satya asked softly. I feel that waking up an utmost exalted is a very rude and disrespectful thing to do. What do you all think? Satya is right. Yerbade sighed. If possible, I also hope that Lord Noah can rest well. Unfortunately, Lord Noah has already instructed that once there is a result on the maintenance costs of the underground tomb of Nasarik, we must report it even if he's resting. Demugos looked at Satya. Moreover, Lord Noah ordered you to see him immediately after you wake up. If you continue to procrastinate after waking up, I think Lord Noah will be angry, right? Hearing this, Satya's shoulders drooped. Then what should we do? There's no other way. Yerbade took a deep breath and said righteously, although it's very disrespectful, let me wake up Lord Noah. As she said this, a blush suddenly appeared on Yerbade's serious and charming face, and her expression also became undulating. I heard that among humans, servants have to do something called a morning kiss to wake up their master. Only then will their master be in a good mood. Sure enough, I can only do this important task. Yerbade's words made Satya, who had been feeling uneasy, raise her eyebrows, and a disdainful smile appeared on her young but exceptionally beautiful face. Forget it. If Lord Noah is kissed by a big-mouthed gorilla like you, his mood will only deteriorate, right? In that case, wouldn't it be worse for you? Yerbade's youthful expression stiffened at Satya's words. After a slight distortion, it turned into a disdainful smile. If Lord Noah knew that a vampire approached him while he was asleep, I'm afraid he would be frightened awake no matter how good his dream is, right? This time, it was Satya's pretty face that stiffened and became slightly distorted. The two girls, one big and one small, emitted an evil aura that represented anger, causing the air in the room to become somewhat gloomy and cold. Just as Demiurgos felt that he should stop them, a weak voice sounded. What are you doing? Satya and Yerbade were startled at the same time. Together with Demiurgos, they looked toward the source of the voice. There, a neatly dressed Noah stood at the door of the bedroom, looking at Satya and Yerbade with narrowed eyes. Don't release that evil aura in someone else's room. If I hadn't woken up, I would have been frightened awake by you, right? Lord Noah. The three guardians hurriedly knelt down on one knee. I'm very sorry. Forget it, I'm not really blaming you. Noah yawned, still looking a little sleepy. What time is it now? Lord Noah. Demiurgos lowered his head and said. According to the time on the surface, it should be around 7 o'clock in the morning. Is that so? Noah patted his cheeks and forced himself to wake up. Then let's talk inside. After that, Noah walked directly to the inner office, opened the door and walked in. Yerbade, Satya, and Demiurgos looked at each other, stood up, and walked into the office with Noah. In the luxurious office, as soon as Noah sat on the black leather chair, Yerbade immediately stepped forward. Lord Noah, regarding the issue of the maintenance cost of the Nasaric underground tomb, we have already come to a conclusion. Is that so? Noah nodded and said. But let's talk about this later. Yerbade was slightly startled, then immediately understood what Noah meant. Under such circumstances, Noah turned his head and cast his gaze on Satya. Satya. Yes. Satya probably didn't expect to be called so suddenly. Her shoulders trembled violently, and her voice was abnormally loud. I'm here. At that moment, Satya's heart was filled with an extremely strong sense of uneasiness. Before discussing the important issue related to the future development of the Nasaric underground tomb, Noah chose to talk to Satya first. Does that mean that compared to the most important issue of the future development of the Nasaric underground tomb, Satya's betrayal is more serious? When she thought of this, Satya could not hide her uneasiness. However, the next moment Noah said such a sentence. There shouldn't be any problems with your body, right? Such a sentence made Satya, who thought she would be reprimanded, stunned at first. Then a look of guilt appeared on her face. Chapter 1236. There was no doubt that the cost of maintaining the underground tomb of Nasaric was unimaginably important to the entire underground tomb of Nasaric. Ever since the underground tomb of Nasaric had officially become operational, Yerbade and Demiurgos had been experimenting with the idea of finding out if the other gold coins could be used in addition to Yggdrasil. If they could be used, it would have a huge impact on the underground tomb of Nasaric. For the sake of the cost of summoning the high-level non-automatic rebirth monsters in the underground tomb of Nasaric, as well as the cost of activating the magic used in the base, as well as the cost of resurrecting NPCs when they died, and so on, once it was confirmed that the other gold coins could be used, the underground tomb of Nasaric would be able to develop rapidly while ensuring that they would be able to get enough money. After all, just by investing a large amount of money to summon a batch of high-level monsters, they would be able to increase the power and strength of the underground tomb of Nasaric at an extremely high efficiency. Although they still had to consider the various expenses that the underground tomb of Nasaric would need in the future, it was still better than not developing at all. If they couldn't use gold coins other than Yggdrasil to maintain the underground tomb of Nasaric, their future development would be greatly limited. Hence, this question was definitely the most important of all the matters in the underground tomb of Nasaric. Before Noah listened to such an important matter, he first called out to Satya. What did that mean? It meant that Satya's matter was more worthy of Noah's attention than such an important question. Initially, Satya thought that Noah was going to question her about her betrayal. However, Noah first asked about Satya's physical condition. Didn't that mean that in Noah's heart, Satya's safety was more important than the development of the underground tomb of Nasaric? However, Satya thought that Noah was going to question her. For the benevolent and merciful Supreme Overlord, how disrespectful and impolite was this? Wasn't it simply gauging the stature of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain? Lord Noah. Satya, who was full of guilt, could no longer bear it. She knelt on one knee and cried out in grief. Undoubtedly, as a guardian, I have committed such a stupid and serious crime. Please give me the harshest punishment. There was even a trace of pain in Satya's voice. However, Yerbade and Demyugos could understand Satya's feelings very well. As long as it was an NPC in the underground tomb of Nasaric, they would be able to understand her feelings. Right? She had the purest of loyalty, but she had done something that she would never be willing to do. Even if she was controlled, it would be unforgivable to the NPCs in the underground tomb of Nasaric. If it's possible, I hope that I can atone for my sins with death. No, please give me a punishment that even death cannot compare to. Satya's voice sounded like a sob. Otherwise, I really can't forgive myself. Satyas was Satya's Yerbade and Demyugos kept their mouths shut. Noah looked at Satya, who was holding back her tears with a guilty expression, and sighed deeply. Satya, regarding your mind control, I am also in the wrong as the one who gave you the order. It can be said that I am the one who indirectly caused you to be controlled, so I really don't want to punish you. Furthermore, you didn't have a choice. I know that the benevolent and merciful Lord Noah will definitely forgive my stupidity, Satya hurriedly said. However, that was my fault for not being able to complete the mission given to me by the Supreme Sovereign and being controlled by the enemy. Lord Noah is definitely not wrong. Yerbade and Demyugos inwardly nodded. Although Satya had acted because of Noah's orders, not only did she not complete the mission, but she also ended up being controlled by the enemy. That was because Satya was incompetent. No matter how they thought about it, it should not be Noah's fault. That was what Yerbade and Demyugos were thinking. Of course, Noah definitely did not have the same thoughts. However, looking at the sorrowful Satya, Noah was also struggling in his heart. It was just like what Yerbade and the others said. Even if Noah thought that he was also in the wrong, Satya would definitely put all the blame on herself. If this sense of guilt was not properly relieved, it would definitely become an irremovable thorn in Satya's heart. Right? Sometimes being too loyal was not always a good thing. Noah immediately stood up from the black leather chair. Under Satya's stunned expression, he directly walked in front of her and knelt down on one knee like her. Lord Noah. Yerbade and Demyugos were shocked. Satya shuddered and almost fainted. Now the supreme ruler of the Nasaric underground tomb, the person whom everyone here was willing to sacrifice everything to be loyal to, was actually kneeling in front of a subordinate. If it weren't for the fact that there were only a few people here, perhaps the entire Nasaric underground tomb would have panicked. In this regard, Noah didn't care at all. He maintained the same height as Satya, looked into her eyes and said very seriously, Shadia, you know that you definitely feel a strong sense of guilt for what happened this time, but I feel the same way about it. After saying this, Noah extended his hand and gently stroked the head of the trembling Shatia, who was almost scared out of her wits, as he spoke in a gentle voice. Even if you say that it's not my fault, there is no doubt that if I hadn't underestimated the people from the Si Lien cult nation and thought that you could easily take them down with your strength, which was why I casually gave the order and didn't consider the consequences carefully, you definitely wouldn't have been controlled. So just like you, my fault can't be covered up. Noah shook his head gently. I know that you definitely won't accept my words, but at least let me apologize to you. I'm sorry, Satya. Sir Noah. Satya stared at Noah absent-mindedly. If you must punish me, then for your sake, I can do as you wish. Noah met Satya's gaze. But you have to remember that you're not allowed to mention anything about using death as an apology in the future. You once swore to me that you would give everything you have to me. You also said that your lives were all mine. Then you carried all of my belongings with you, but when you made a mistake, you used my belongings to apologize. That's not right, is it? Noah's gaze swept across Yerbade, Demyugos, and Zaisha as he spoke. So all of you remember that your lives are mine. Without my permission, you're not allowed to lose them. Do you hear me? These words turned into a surge of heat that surged in the hearts of Yerbade, Satya, and Demyugos. Without any hesitation, Yerbade and Demyugos knelt on one knee at the same time. Together with Satya, who had her head lowered, they let out a voice that seemed to burst out from the depths of their souls. Yes, sir. Noah smiled faintly and stood up. He bent down and lifted Satya's chin, a slightly malicious smile on his face. As for Satya, your punishment will be left for tonight. Night? Tonight? Satya was startled at first. Then she seemed to have thought of something and widened her eyes in ecstasy. Could it be? What is it? Noah said as if he was tempting a child. Come to my room tonight and you'll understand. Yes. Satya's voice was louder than before, and everyone could sense the joy in it. However, at this moment the temperature in the room suddenly dropped. Night room, punishment, punishment in the room at night. Yerbeda lowered his head, and a smile appeared on his face as if he had broken it. That scene was enough to scare an ordinary person to death. Chapter 1237. After a while, Satya happily left Noah's office with a completely different mood from when she first arrived. Thus, only Noah, Yerbeda, and Dimyugos were left in the entire office. However, the three of them were in completely different moods. Noah was as relaxed as if he had solved an important matter, and sat back down on the black leather chair. Yerbeda was brimming with resentment. He looked at Noah like a resentful woman who had been left out of her room. His eyes were filled with resentment. Dimyugos, on the other hand, was still touched by Noah's words just now, and he cast a look of respect and longing at Noah. Noah, who had already expected Yerebeda's obvious resentment, ignored it and acted as if nothing had happened. He spoke to Yerebeda and Dimyugos. Well, Satya's matter has been resolved. Tell me what you plan to report. Yes. Dimyugos lowered his head and replied. Then, he hurriedly nudged Yerbeda and gave him a look. Yerbeda pursed his lips and looked extremely unwilling, but he also knew that now was not the time to be jealous and envious. He could only stand up reluctantly. Sir Noah. Yerbeda adjusted his mood, and his beautiful face regained its calmness. Like I said just now, we have already come to a conclusion about the cost of maintaining the big underground tomb in Nasariq. Is that so? Noah leaned forward a little and asked seriously. So what's the result? The result is very gratifying. Yerbeda shared the good news. Whether it's the gold coins in Yggdrasil, the gold coins from this world brought back from the surface, or even the gold coins given by Sir Noah, they can all be used to maintain the big underground tomb in Nasariq. Hearing this, Noah's eyes suddenly lit up. This was indeed an extremely good piece of news. If the gold coins of this world could really be used to maintain the big underground tomb in Nasariq, then there would be no need to deliberately save the gold coins in Yggdrasil in the treasure hall of Nasariq's underground tomb. They could develop without worry. In particular, the news that the gold coins given by Noah could also be used was even better. With a treasure house that could produce unlimited gold coins, there would be no need to worry about the cost of maintaining the big underground tomb in Nasariq in the future. This moment Dimyugos said. However, we found that the three different types of gold coins used to maintain the big underground tomb in Nasariq have completely different degrees of consumption. Completely different degrees of consumption? Noah asked in confusion. What's going on? This is the final confirmation after many experiments, Yerbeda replied. We found that the different types of gold coins used to maintain the big underground tomb in Nasariq have different degrees of consumption. For example, if we use 3 different types of gold coins to summon the same type of monster, the degree of consumption is completely different. Dimyugos presented a prepared report. Sir Noah can take a look at the details. Noah did not hesitate and directly took the report from Dimyugos and began to read it. After a while, Noah understood what was going on. Simply put, the 3 types of gold coins used to do the same thing were completely different degrees of consumption. For example, if he used the gold coins in Yggdrasil to summon a level 70 monster, he would need to spend 100,000 gold coins. However, if he used the gold coins of this world to summon a monster of the same level, type and race, he would need to spend 200,000 gold coins. If he used the gold coins that Noah took out from the Gate of Babylon, he would only need to spend 10,000 gold coins to summon the same monster. Other than the summoning of the monster, the rest of the cost showed the same result. In other words, for the big underground tomb in Nasariq, the value of the gold coins that Noah took out from the Gate of Babylon was 10 times greater than the value of the gold coins in Yggdrasil. The gold coins in Yggdrasil were twice as valuable as the gold coins in this world. Naturally, under such circumstances, The expenditure of the 3 types of gold coins for the same purpose would naturally be different. After this experiment, we are sure of one thing. Yerbate smiled slightly. That is, the problem of the maintenance cost of the big underground tomb in Nasarick can be used as long as it is gold coins. And the amount of money consumed is completely dependent on the gold content, Demiugos said. Among the 3 types of gold coins, the gold coins that Lord Noah gave us have the highest gold content, so the consumption time is also the least. The gold coins in Yggdrasil have the second highest gold content, which is only 1/10 of the value of the gold coins that Lord Noah gave us. As for the gold coins in this world, they have the least gold content. Compared to the gold coins in Yggdrasil, their value is only half, Yerbate continued. Therefore, we are sure that the difference in cost is determined by the gold content. As long as it is gold coins, no matter where they come from, they can be used. So that's how it is. Noah came to a realization and smiled. In that case, we don't have to spend so much effort to earn money on the surface anymore, right? No, the money in this world still has its value. Demiugos shook his head. According to the information we have, in this world, different human countries use different gold coins. It is generally difficult to use the gold coins of other countries in another country. Presumably, apart from the gold coins of this world, it will be slightly troublesome to use the 2 types of gold coins we have in this world. And when the people in the big underground tomb in Nasarick make items, they need to consume materials. These will need to be obtained from this world in the future. Yerbate nodded. If we have the gold coins of this world, then we can buy a large amount of materials from this world to make all kinds of items. That's true. Noah also nodded. This can indeed avoid a lot of trouble. In addition, we also found a coin box in Nasarick, Demiugos said with a smile. That is a tool used to exchange gold coins in Yggdrasil. As long as you put an item in, the coin box will be able to appraise the value of the item and exchange it for gold coins in Yggdrasil of the same value. What? Noah suddenly smiled helplessly. So there is a way to obtain gold coins in Yggdrasil? Then wouldn't my efforts be in vain? You can't say that, Yerbate quickly said. After all, compared to gold coins, all kinds of items and magical tools are undoubtedly more useful. It would be a waste to put them in the coin box. Moreover, the value of the items appraised by the coin box will definitely be lower than the original value of the item. Even if you let someone with a merchant profession operate it, it will still be much lower than the original value. Demiugos agreed. So, as for the coin exchange box, it's better not to use it unless it's absolutely necessary. Noah nodded in understanding. Regardless of the value compared to gold coins, Noah naturally hoped to obtain magical tools with all kinds of wonderful uses. If he ran out of gold coins, he could think of other ways to obtain them. However, if he ran out of precious magical tools, it would definitely be much harder to obtain them than gold coins. Moreover, compared to carrying money with him, magical tools that could be used at critical times were undoubtedly much more precious. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Noah would not exchange his precious items for gold coins. Thus Noah stood up. All of you, come with me to the library. Yerbate and Demiugos both nodded. Chapter 1238. On the 10th floor of the underground tomb of Nasarick, there was a huge library. It was a dark brown library. The atmosphere in the air was very calm, and there was a gentle magical light that illuminated every corner of the library. The high ceiling was circular. There was a huge door outside. The size of the door was comparable to the door of the throne room. On both sides of the door, there was a gorm that was more than 3 meters tall. The gorms had the appearance of a warrior, and their bodies flickered with a luster that normal stones or metals could not have. It was obvious that they were made from extremely rare materials. Although they were inanimate objects and their auras could not be sensed, the solemn atmosphere around the 2 gorms told others that they were definitely much stronger than normal gorms. With Noah in the lead, Yerbate and Demiugos on his left and right like bodyguards, the 3 of them arrived in front of the huge door guarded by the gorms. If it was anyone else in the underground tomb of Nasarick, they would have knelt down upon seeing Noah. However, the gorms did not have intelligence, nor were they living creatures. They were just weapons, so they naturally did not have such knowledge. Thus, Yerbate and Demiugos could not reprimand the 2 gorms for being rude, and Yerbate spoke loudly. "Open the door." Reacting to Yerbate's words, the gorms standing on both sides of the door suddenly moved. Like stone giants and robots, the two Gorms clumsily moved to the side and slowly pushed open the huge door. In the next moment, a space that was more like an art gallery than a library appeared in front of Noah's eyes. It was a space with all kinds of huge bookshelves. The walls, floor, and even the bookshelves were decorated with countless decorations. There was not even a speck of dust on the bright and clean floor, and beautiful patterns were drawn on it. There was also a huge wet mural on the ceiling. From here one could see the second floor on both sides. After all, above the wall, there was a stand that protruded outwards. There were also rooms with entrances, and bookshelves were placed in the rooms. It looked like a heavenly kingdom of books. A few glass display cabinets with extremely precious books that were obviously different from ordinary books also entered Noah's eyes. A tranquil atmosphere filled the air. Noah, Yair-Bade and Demugos walked into the library together. The door behind them was slowly closed by the two Gorms. Right now, Noah, Yair-Bade and Demugos were in a place called the Realm of Reason. The huge library that existed in the 10th floor of the Great Tomb of Nassarik was divided into 3 sections: the space of knowledge, the space of reason, and the space of magic. Noah looked around and exclaimed as he walked along the aisles separated by bookshelves. Is this the library on the 10th floor of the Nassarik catacombs? In fact, Noah already knew about the existence of this library. That was because some of the books stored in this library were extremely precious to the Great Tomb of Nassarik. The books here could be divided into 5 types. The first type was the summoning book used to summon monsters. The summoning of high-level magical creatures that were not automatically reborn required a summoning ritual and a corresponding amount of money before it could be carried out. The item required for the summoning ritual was the summoning book. If one did not use the summoning book but used summoning magic to summon monsters, then the monsters that were summoned were the most common and low-level monsters. The monsters that were summoned using the summoning book were not only very rare, but their levels were also much higher than ordinary monsters. Even their magic, skills, and races were very rare. The second type was the item book used to store magical props. Some special and precious magical props with very powerful effects and functions were stored in these item books. The third type was the magic book used to use them. In Yggdrasil, sometimes, if one wanted to change into a specific profession or race, they would need the corresponding items. Among them, there were many items in the form of books. For example, the Book of the Dead that could transform people into undead, the Seed of the Fallen that could transform people into demons, and the Wings of Ascension that could transform people into angels, and so on. Using these items could allow one to change into a specific profession or even race. In Yggdrasil, such items had different values depending on the race and class of the player. The magic book stored here was the kind of item that could be used to change one's profession or race to an extremely precious profession. The fourth type was the information book used to create equipment, items, and items. The creation of some precious equipment, items, and items could not be done by just anyone. It was like a blueprint. The creation of precious equipment, items, and items required these information books in addition to materials. With these information books, as long as one had the required forging skills and materials, one could create the items recorded in them. As for the fifth type, they were novels. Most of them were classic novels that were widely circulated in the original world, or novels with the background of the game as the story. There were even original novels written by players in Yggdrasil, as well as second novels and game guides. Noah's goal on this trip was the first 4 types of books. The summoning books and information books were intended to be given to Yair-Bade and Demugos for their use. They would be used to summon monsters and create items, thus expanding the power and influence of Nazarik's underground tomb. The item books and magic books had wonderful uses. Naturally, Noah wanted to collect them. While expanding the treasury, he also wanted to prepare for an emergency. Of course, most of the summoning books and information books here had backups. Noah also planned to collect those books. Perhaps, in other worlds, if he needed manpower or specific items, Noah could make preparations with these summoning books and information books. It's just that there are so many books here, Noah exclaimed. Apart from the novels and guides, the summoning books, item books, magic books, and information books are all very useful and precious. There are so many of them here. The main ones are the novels and guides. Compared to the novels and guides, the other 4 types of books don't even add up to 1% of the total, right? Yair-Bade said in an admiring tone. Even so, the number of summoning books, item books, magic books, and information books here is quite shocking. To be able to collect so many precious items, as expected of the supremes of the past. Demiurgos nodded in agreement. He then turned his head and looked at Noah. Lord Noah, since you're here, would you like to see the scribe of the library? The scribe of the library. Noah nodded as he recalled the information about this NPC. That's fine. I also want to see how far the production of scrolls has progressed. After saying this, Noah walked forward. After an unknown amount of time, an inner door appeared in front of Noah. Yair bade and Demiurgos immediately went forward and opened the door. Immediately, a spacious room with huge bookshelves appeared in front of Noah's eyes. Upon closer inspection, the bookshelves were not filled with books, but with all kinds of miscellaneous items. There were ores, metals, gems, powders, and organs of unknown creatures on the bookshelves. These things were all materials needed to make scrolls. In addition, there was a large amount of parchment, either rolled up on the bookshelves or bundled up on the ground. They filled the entire room. In the center of the room was a large stone platform. On the side of the platform stood a skeleton. It was a skeleton that was a mixture of human and animal bones. It was only about 150 centimeters tall, had 2 horns on its head, 4 fingers, and hoof-shaped toes. It wore a long robe, had a turban on its head, and had pieces of cloth wrapped around its waist.